Just checking audio online, thank you.
I can hear you if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is the final audio check. Thank you.
I can hear you. Thank you.
I can't even see what's under here. Do you have your glasses? Do you need to see what's going on there?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Murdoch. I'm the Mayor of Oak Bay, and I'm going to call the regularly scheduled council meeting for May the 12th to order. Time is now 7 p.m. We just like to take a moment at the beginning of our meetings to acknowledge that we do hold these meetings in the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees, or in the Esquimalt Nation, also known as the Kasapsum Nation. Just that their historic connections to these lands and adjoining waters continues to this day. Our first order of business, as always, is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. We have adoption of minutes from the regular council meeting 2 on April 28th and 1 on May 5th. Can I have a mover for all three? Moved and seconded. Are there any changes or amendments to any of the three that people wish to see? Not seeing any. And we do have Councillor Braithwaite online, but haven't heard anything. So all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Mayor's remarks. Given the potential length of the meeting tonight, I'm just going to keep my comments fairly brief. I do want to acknowledge that we do have Councillor Braithwaite who's attending from a long way away at the moment, but joining us virtually online. I also want to just welcome Thomas Soulier, our new Director of Parks, Rec and Culture here in Oak Bay. Welcome. Nice to have you in the room. I do acknowledge it is both Local Government Awareness Week and National Police Week this week, and to that end, I was actually at the BC Association of Police Board conference last week, and I just have to give kudos to both the organizers and to the province, who, despite the travel bans, were quite participatory in this year's conference in a way they haven't always been. And I just it's always nice to kind of just recognize when they actually when they show up and work together with partners. I just want to remind people that the Oak Bay Half Marathon is happening on May 25th. So lower part of Newport and Oak Bay Avenue will be closed very early in the morning, but will be open after that. But Beach Drive will be quite congested. And last but not least, I just want to let everybody know that the tax notices, and with those the annual questionnaire, are going out by the end of this month. And as requested from council as well, those questionnaires are being sent to rental properties as well as just within the tax notices. So if you get that tax notice, I always think this is a bit of a glutton for punishment thing, but we shifted to adding our feedback form as part of our tax notice. So at the point that you probably like us the least, you're going to have the opportunity to give us feedback on how we're doing. So that is, expect that by the end of this month. That concludes my comments, and we now move to public comment and question period. This is an opportunity that we have at all of our meetings for things that are not on the agenda, for members of the public to address council. These are just items of interest to the district in general. I see a hand. Please come forward. And just as you're coming forward, I'll give everybody the how-to guide, which is have a seat. You can push the button on the thing to turn on the microphone, state your name, municipality of residence, and then you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Margaret Paul, and I'm a resident of Oak Bay, living on Woodburn Avenue. For 23 years, we lived on St. Patrick Street. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm going to make a presentation that I've written out because I'm a writer, not a speaker. And so I hope you'll forgive me for that, for reading. It has to do with the process that we have been through because our house is adjacent to 2298 Lansdowne Road. And so for the last number of months, we have been preoccupied with this possible development. So the process, I think, has some serious flaws, and that's what I'd like to address. The challenge for me this evening will be to keep my comments brief and to keep my emotions in check, because the past year has been a traumatic one for myself and my husband. I'm here to speak about our current situation with forced densification in the community, and my concern is particularly with the process by which decisions are made for local development. I'm in complete agreement with the mayor, and I believe with the entire council and the Oak Bay community, when I say that the provincial government has dictated changes in local zoning which are an undemocratic overreach, and while they say Bill 44 is intended to benefit the population of BC, it is based on the false assumption that increasing housing will bring prices down. It has never done that, and as much as the Housing Minister and the Urban Development Institute would like us to believe it, house prices are determined by a complex network of factors, not the least of which is market control by owners and developers. Vancouver has an enormous number of houses, too many to sell, and the prices just keep going up. What we do need is subsidized housing for those who cannot afford market prices. But leaving that aside for a moment, I would like to speak about how decisions are made within the municipality to approve or reject a development proposal. And I will use the case of 2298 Lansdowne as a specific example.
I just ask that we don't use a specific example because we have some limitations about speaking to a specific application, but you can just talk in general
I
purposes.
realize that's the case, and yet I think this is a very important illustration of the process and the flaws in it. John and I first heard about the proposal to build a 13-unit townhouse complex a few feet from our home in July of 2024. We heard it from a neighbor, not from anyone in the Oak Bay Planning Office. I recently applied for copies of emails concerning this development under the Freedom of Information Act, and we were interested to learn that the request for a permit to develop the property on Lansdowne was submitted in early March of 2024. By the time we heard of it, almost 5 months later, the discussions between staff and developers Scott and Jennifer Travelby were well along, to the point where friendly communications had become routine. We, whose lives were potentially going to be upended, were left entirely out of the process. When in mid-July we did visit the planning department on our own volition in order to express our concerns about the loss of our winter sun, our privacy, the destruction of trees, the enormous structure that would be looming over our one-story home, and over all the surrounding bungalows where such a building would present an incongruent fortress, and finally the dangerous and illegal access from Woodburn, we felt our opinions were tolerated at best.
I'm going to ask you we have a strict 3 minutes, and we're over that amount of time.
Well, you know what? My husband can't be here because of his health.
There may be somebody else who can
And
continue
so
on
you
the-
can just
so
pretend
we
that he's sitting beside me.
I do have a procedure bylaw I do have to follow. Not that we don't want to hear what you have to say. It is
Yeah.
really important. I
Well,
know
you know
the
what?
process.
This is part of the problem in the process. Because we are so far along. This started in March of 2024, and our voices have been mostly silent up until this point.
I do hear that. I don't want to cut you off, but I just wanted, our process here, how about I ask you to take a seat? If there's space at the end of the meeting, I'll invite you to come up and continue within our time frame.
Okay.
I think there will be. I don't think we have A full time slot.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think the first page is probably 3 minutes. I did time myself, so I think I have another minute.
You don't, you're 5 minutes in
Oh,
now.
you have a time?
I do.
Okay.
You're 5 minutes in. I just
All
want to
right.
give everybody the respect of the opportunity.
All right, well, I've just really just begun because I think
Just,
primarily.
if you take a seat, then if there's room at the end, I'm happy to invite you back up again. I just want to make sure everybody
Okay.
has a fair access
All
to
right.
the time slot we have
Okay.
here. Sorry, I know that doesn't feel good, but that's just where we are. And for the interest of those, and I appreciate people don't know this, but we're trying to spread the word. We do have a development tracker tool, and the next person can come forward. I saw a hand at the back, can come forward. I think people are still learning this tool, but just for these purposes, if you are interested in applications, you can set geographical bounds and get notified if there's applications coming in within a geographical range of you. So we do have some tools in place to help allow that. So same process, sir, if you want to have a seat, and just name municipality of residence and up to 3 minutes.
Sure, never done this before, so this is the button I press?
I hope so. If you hit the wrong one, it blows up. So that's not good.
There you go. Anyway, well, a lovely lady that spoke before me, I'm just going to be backing her up on certain things on the same project. So we're on record 2298 Lansdowne Road. Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. My name is Tom Doan. I have lived on Woodburn Avenue, 3421 Woodburn Avenue, the north end, for 30 years. My 3 kids went to Uplands, Monterey, Oak Bay High, New Vic. And so we are very heavily invested in the community. We're not going anywhere. We've got our flag in the sand, so to speak. I'll try to very much make it quick. The proposed 13-unit development is simply too big for the site.
Dolan,
And
I can't take things on the specific application. You can talk in generalities about applications, but you can't speak to a specific application on this.
Oh.
Our procedure bylaw does not allow for land use applications that are coming before council for public input to be held in this.
so not
this
even,
portion of the
can't even
meeting.
mention the access off Woodburn or anything like that?
You can talk in general terms about aspects of development projects, but you can't speak to a specific application. You will have the opportunity, but not
Okay,
at this
well,
meeting.
Anyway, this asking for a friend proposed application, 13 units is it's just a complete disregard for the dead end and the peace and security of the people at that end. There is no bus service on Lansdowne, so it will be all about vehicular traffic. You're not going to be people biking or catching the bus or anything. There's no bus on Lansdowne. And aside from the obvious negatives, as the lovely lady said, the provincial government of the day, do you listen to them or do you listen to the voters and the residents that have been around for many, many years? Governments come and go. They make grand policy announcements and then either scrap the plans or simply don't get reelected and they disappear. You guys have been around. I've been around. I think the respect has to be, has been earned by us who have put in our time here. Residents of the area deserve your support to scale back the project to a reasonable size, I think, with no access off Woodburn, can't say that, and a reduction in the overall height. 4 units, okay, 6 units maximum. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. My apologies for the problems. You can have a seat if you wish, and the next person can come forward.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage people. So the process for land use applications is until an application finds its way through the process, it can be changed at any time. And so we don't just discuss applications because they may be very different by the time to come to this table. There are some conditions in which we can't take public input. This is not one of them. Anything that requires any kind of zoning change or OCP change, things of that nature, will have public input into them. So when the final design does come, we just letting you know we have not had a chance to have a weigh in on this. But as members of the public, you can reach out to the applicant and share your thoughts, and they have the opportunity to amend it before it comes to council.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, please come forward, and then I see there's a couple of hands. Welcome. Oh, sorry, the microphone was on, and you just turned it off, but there we go.
Just testing. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Katrina Connors, and I live at 742 St. Patrick's Street here in Oak Bay. And I'm here today to provide my family's perspective on a motion that's being tabled today on short-term rentals in Oak Bay. And as you might know, hopefully know, the province has recently introduced new legislation governing the regulation of short-term rentals. And this new legislation recognizes that occasional short-term rentals in a homeowner's principal residence do not detract from rental housing supply, since it's where homeowners reside for the majority of their time. In fact, the new regulations recognize the significant benefits of short-term rentals, including providing an important income stream for families and residents of Oak Bay that are grappling with affordability issues. They also provide significant economic benefits to municipalities in the form of tourism and tax revenue. And in fact, for rentals that are 26 days or less, short-term rental platforms actually levy a tax of up to 3% that goes back to municipalities like Oak Bay, and that can be used in turn to support housing affordability initiatives, including subsidized housing. At this point, almost all, if not all, municipalities in BC have since reviewed and revised their short-term rental policies and associated bylaws. The exception is Oak Bay. We have chosen to couple this review with a much broader and larger process associated with Bill 44 and looking at our official community plan. And the consequence of this has been that there has been no movement on this issue, even though motion was tabled last year by Councillor Smart, asking for staff to come back to council on recommendations for the regulation of short-term rentals. I understand that a similar motion is being proposed and discussed tonight, and I'm here to call for immediate action that will enable homeowners to rent their principal residence on occasion, consistent with the new provincial legislation. Tabling the same motion tonight and expecting a different outcome does not make sense in my opinion. We need a new motion that compels action, has a clear timeline for completion for staff, and leads to change. So to that end, I would strongly advise council to consider amending the motion tonight such that bylaw 3531 and all relevant bylaws provide an exemption for short-term rentals in principal residences. This will allow council to move forward on this issue while recognizing and also being pragmatic on the limits of planning staff capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I theoretically would prefer those to come at the meet when the motion is on the table, but I appreciate it's probably at the end of the night and people may not want to stick around here for the whole time. So thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Welcome.
I am back again, a resident of Oak Bay, and I just want to echo
Can you
what
just give your
Katrina,
name for the record? So we're
Megan
minutes. Thank you.
Taylor,
Thank you.
sorry,
No
what
problem.
Katrina has said, which you have heard me recently speak about, and that is the motion that's going to be heard today on short-term rentals. I did want to say that people talk about the recently new provincial legislation, but it's actually not, in my opinion, very new anymore. It's already been in place for a year. The platform is already up. The province is already administering the process and issuing numbers to people, and have been for some time, since January. So it is not a new process. And I have a genuine question for this council. Someone spoke, about the provincial elected representatives, but each of you are elected representatives. You're here doing your jobs for us. And I'm just wondering what is taking our municipality so long. I was disappointed to learn that the motion that's going to be heard today is the same that staff were already tasked with, and that staff didn't come back and respond. And I'm a bit appalled that we're going to do the exact same thing and expect a different result.
If you want to, I can maybe give some clarification of that if it helps.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure. So the
Because this
motion.
process actually is
No, no.
difficult, where you get to speak afterwards and we don't have a conversation.
No, it's fair. So very briefly, part of this intention is you can ask questions, but for some clarifications, you're correct that motion was made quite some time ago. Council, in the consideration of its priorities and limited staff time, agreed to roll that into a review of our business licenses, and that's where it's sitting right now. The impact of that, given we're now, as you note, the province is opening up registration applications and pieces, has spurred this to be brought back tonight to separate it out and see if we can advance it. It is the same but it was not staff who changed that process. That was us through a process. I want to assign blame in the right direction. It's here.
I appreciate that, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you clarifying that. I just want to add, I guess, that I deal with this kind of stuff on a regular basis. I've reviewed our bylaws. It's not a complicated process, and it doesn't need to be. And if we can extract that piece out and deal with it on its own, and simplify the things that we can simplify and leave the complicated pieces for later, I think we'll all be better off.
Thank you for sharing
If I
that.
have any extra time, I would grant it to the lady.
So would I, but I do want to give everybody the chance to speak once, so please come forward. The microphone is on. You're good.
Thank you.
Name and municipality, please.
Name is Patrick Weeb. I'm at 2467 Estevan Avenue. Honorable Mayor, Council, thanks for your time. I'm also going to speak about short-term rentals. We've been, me and my family and many of our friends in our neighborhood have been in the neighborhood for many years and are committed to the community, the municipality. We're very involved at all kinds of levels, whether in our schools, at our football clubs, in the neighborhood. We all are desiring to make Oak Bay a better place. By restricting short-term rentals, it has become unmanageable for many families, including ours. Knowing that, yes, long-term rental is an option now for legal suites. But when you don't have that option, whether it be because of your family circumstances, trying to maximize your revenue into your home, every dollar counts. And I'll say, every dollar or every day that Oak Bay does not change the bylaws is another day that you're not eligible for this income that's due to you if you change these bylaws. Immediate action seems like the only reasonable thing. We hope you consider that and move forward with that today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to come and address council? On any matter of interest to the, oh yes, you're allowed to get your drink back, that's allowed. We're good like that. I don't see other hands, I'm just looking online as well, if there's anybody indicating they wish to speak. I think we can got another 3 minutes available if the first speaker wishes to come back. You're welcome to do so. Sorry, and I didn't write down your name. Ms. Paul?
I'm sorry, I
Oh.
can't hear you very well.
Oh, my apologies. I've just said we have an extra few minutes here if you want to come back up and use the second 3 minutes.
Thank you. My hearing, and I'm not ready for hearing aids, but I think I need them.
No one's ever ready for hearing aids, I can tell you that much.
All right.
So I'll reset and give you another 3 minutes here if that's all right. So there we go.
Okay. All right. When in mid-July, we did visit the planning department on our own volition in order to express our concerns about the loss of our winter sun, our privacy, the destruction of trees, the enormous structure that would be looming over our one-story home, and overall the surrounding bungalows. We felt our opinions were tolerated at best. We note that from the inception of this process, after months of input by the municipal staff, not a single substantive change was made to the proposal. Nowhere in the emails among staff can we see that the police were ever consulted about the feasibility and legality of having cars drive on the wrong side of the road on a public street if, in fact, Woodburn becomes the access point for this development. Nor is there any mention of municipal liability if the municipality sanctions drivers crossing the center line of a public road and an accident occurs, as it surely will, because not only are cars coming and going amidst large vehicles turning around, but pedestrians are being directed to walk into the street where there is no sidewalk. A traffic report commissioned by the developers ignored the obvious problems with access from Woodburn, and in fact the report was full of omissions and errors, yet it seems to have convinced planners that they should dismiss any safety
A
concerns.
point of order,
Ms. Paul,
please.
yeah.
we can't be doing,
Yeah, we just can't be hearing your opinions on the particular application. I know you're speaking to some of the process attached to it, but
Okay,
I also just want to point out that, again, just for the clarity of yourself and the public, I think sometimes there's an expectation. The staff's role in these matters is to explain the rules and the process to the applicant, not to approve or disapprove. It's just to bring it forward. If it's not in compliance with the OCP, then they flag that in the report and it's up to council. So I want to just make clear, I'm hearing some things there of tolerance and not pushing back, but that's not really their job. Their job is to just help them facilitate the process, as it would be with any applicant for anything. So I just want to throw that out there, but please
Right.
continue. If you could just, maybe just, you're sort of we're walking close to a line here, but go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, all right, I'll extrapolate a little bit. The fire department was consulted, and I think in most cases where there's a concern about fire and fire truck access, I understand it's routine to consult with the fire department. In this particular case, the fire truck can't access those buildings, so it does put us at risk. I was also wanting to just point out that as part of the process, developers were inviting people to comment on February 18th at a public meeting, and there were over 160 submissions made, most of them negative, and judging by the conversations with people that were in attendance. And I've never seen those results shared, and I don't know whether you have ever seen them either. So that was another concern about the
Again, not wanting to speak to a
process.
specific application, we don't see these things, like the
Right,
process
and-
that is
Yeah.
underway right now is between the applicant and what they decide to bring to council in their final piece. So
Right.
it's up to them whether or not they decide to use that feedback. We will see a summary of what happened, but the
Yeah,
question
and-
is being asked, just for clarification, no,
Right.
council does not see anything that the public doesn't see until it comes to us.
Right.
Public sees exactly the same information that we see. That's all that happens. So the question is just, it's a broad answer. We don't see it.
Okay, well, it's an exercise that is in futility then, to fill out these forms. Anyway, I guess my main point is that more than a year has passed, and this development proposal has occupied many, many hours of the staff's time that I and all the other citizens in the community pay them for, and yet the proposal is essentially the same as when it was submitted many months ago. It seems a waste to me that this has happened, and that I think in future, we should be inviting people whose lives are going to be impacted tremendously into the process much sooner than is presently the case.
Sure. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to
Okay.
conclude to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and there's no perfect process, but I do want to share, it is really up to the applicants in these situations to bring forward an application they think will have success with the community. We can't control what they decide to bring forward, but that is the process. There's something else you said I was going to comment on, but I can't remember what it was. But thank you for those pieces on those, for bringing those forward. When it does, if it comes forward ultimately to council, there will be opportunity for the public to weigh in. That's a position for the public to provide their feedback to us. That's where we hear it. Anybody, I guess I already asked that question, and I'm actually out of time, so I'm going to wrap that portion of the meeting up now, and we will move on to items on the agenda. We go to item number 6, which is the Committee of the Whole recommendations from the meeting held April 22nd. There are 2 recommendations that came out of that. So we meet as committee once a month. We spend a fair bit of time with public input and with staff coming up with recommendations. Those recommendations come here. We have both in 6.1 and 6.2, which is the OCP draft policy pieces and the public engagement approach for the active transportation network, which has actually already been done and is later on in the agenda. But if there's anybody who wishes to speak to either of these 2 agenda items, this is the time to do so. Otherwise, we'll generally just procedurally move through them fairly quickly. So is there anybody from the public who wishes to talk to us about 6.1 or 6.2? Not seeing any, I'll take a motion to receive. There was we approving or receiving, sorry, of my glasses off here. Approving, thank you. I just needed my glasses. Why don't we move them one at a time? So we should move 6.1.
I will move the staff recommendations, or the recommendations from the Committee of the Whole under item 6.1, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you. We have a lot of discussion. We had that the other day, but if there's anything that people wish to flag, we can do so now. Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Same motion for 6.2, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would move the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole under item 6.2 on the agenda.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. We then move to item 7.1, our 2024 Statement of Financial Informations. We have Ms. LaChance here, our Director of Finance and Asset Management. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and members of Council. I am pleased to be here this evening to present the District's 2024 Statement of Financial Information. The report included in your package includes the 2024 audited financials, additional schedules as required by the Financial Information Act, and KPMG's audit report. The accompanying report provides highlights of all the material, and it reports the findings to Council. This evening, I'm joined by Kanchana Sakar, our District's Manager of Financial Operations, to assist me with my presentation. And then I'm also joined just behind me by our KPMG partner, Liette Bates-Amer, who will present her audit findings to Council directly after some introductory comments. Annually, Council must approve the audited financial statements, which have been prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. This approval is required by May 15th in accordance with Section 167 and 169 of the Community Charter, and such that staff then can meet legislative filing deadlines for the local government reporting to the Ministry. Additionally, as required by Section 2 of the Financial Information Act, Council is asked to approve the various unaudited schedules. Historically, Council would have received those under two separate reports, one in May and one in June. However, the opportunity to streamline work was presented, and the package has been prepared in entirety for Council this evening. Upon approval, staff will prepare the final versions, and the entire package will be made available for the public viewing on our website and at Municipal Hall. Staff will also complete the related ministry filings. And just before I transition over to KPMG's partner, I just wanted to draw our attention to the audit findings report. There are two items I'd like to highlight for Council. New for Council this year would be an attached letter, a management letter, as referred to by the auditors. It's a letter basically from the auditor reporting on matters encountered during their audit, where we would need to pay maybe more attention. The two themes that we see there are related to financial controls and financial oversight with PRC Parks, Recreation and Culture transactions and activity. With growing operations, that's not uncommon, but something for us to pay attention to. And additionally, there is a report back to Council on a 2023 taxpayer matter. And I just draw your attention to that with them being new items for Council. Council is being asked to receive the audit findings report and approve the statement of financial information for 2024. And just before I pass over to Ms. Bates-Amer, I would like to just say a big thank you to staff who performed so well in achieving the results we present here tonight. It does take the whole team to meet this level of compliance on behalf of the district. So with that, both myself and Ms. Sakar will be here for questions, if Council has any, and I'll go ahead and call Ms. Bates-Amer up for her brief presentation. And your seat's right there.
Welcome, Ms. Bates-Amer. We've probably learned the routine by the other speakers here, so welcome.
Hi. Okay, so you've all received our report. I think we've met before. I'm the engagement partner. Our manager this year, again, was Aomidi, who I think had joined us for a minute, but I'm not sure that she's still there. We also have a second partner that reviews our deliverables that go to Council, and that's Lenore Lee. In terms of, I'm just going to point out the highlights in the report. Obviously, won't go through it in a lot of detail. The status at this point of the audit is we're complete. We have received all the information we need, completed all of our testing. Basically, once council accepts the financial statements, we're in a position to sign. We have the audit opinion, or the draft audit opinion, is included in the draft financial statements. And there's just one thing I wanted to note for you in there, because of management putting together the statement of financial information package earlier this year. There's an additional paragraph I need to add to that audit opinion. So that's in the actual financial statements. The independent auditor's report will include some standard wording around when the auditor has available to us other information. So your statement of financial information package contains a full copy of the audited financial statements. Therefore, it meets the definition of other information that we are required to review for any material inconsistencies with the financial statements. And because that's ready, when we're ready to sign, I will include that paragraph. We have reviewed that package, and so it's a non-event paragraph that we've read it and now we have nothing to say. In the report, we discussed the materiality that we used this year in the audit. It was 1.2 million, and that's consistent with last year. We drive our materiality off of expenses, so we're at about 2.3% of expenses. And remember, this materiality figure is driven by the users of the financial statements and is the threshold for errors within the financial statements that might, if an error were to be greater than that, might change a user's decision when using the financial statements to make economic decisions. With a materiality of 1.2 million, we are required to report to council on any differences that we find throughout our work that are greater than 60,000. So we do our testing at much lower levels, and then we need to report to you anything over 60,000. In the report, we discuss the risks identified in planning for this audit, as well as the kind of main focus areas of audit work when we are auditing your financial statements. There's one risk identified in there, which, if you remember from prior years, is one that we have to identify in all audits. Is not specific to the district, which is the fraud risk due to management override of controls. So in any audit we perform, we have to have this as a risk. We do journal entry testing, looking at any estimates used in the financial statements or significant unusual transactions to address this risk, and we have nothing to report. In the area of revenue, receivables, deferred revenue, we did have a couple findings in that area this year. First thing I'll mention is there was a new accounting standard applicable for this year, which the district adopted, which was 3400. A new section on revenue that I mentioned in the past was coming, and analysis would need to be performed to see if the new guidance in this revenue standard would change the way that you are reporting any of your revenues. And that analysis was done, which resulted in certain permit revenues being deferred and matched with when the performance obligations associated with those permits were met. So there was a slight change to the prior year deferrals that are noted in the current year. And then going forward, you're going to be matching those, the recognition of revenue on those items once the performance obligations have been met. So we had no issues with the adoption of the new standard. We did note one minor reclassification entry, or gross up, we'll call it. There was 351,000 of accounts receivable and deferred revenue related to future bookings related to recreation activities, which were removed. And then we have one uncorrected item, which was just upon review, there was one deposit or permit amount that should have been recognized as revenue. And so I think you'll see in the management letter, we kind of had some recommendations around reviewing that, which management plans to do going forward. So that amount remains uncorrected at the end of this year. So 183,000 uncorrected on a materiality of 1.2 does not affect our opinion. Nothing other to report really in our testing over tangible capital assets. You know, we look at the additions that are put in, as well as test the amortization booked in the year. expenses, payables, and payroll. No findings there. We do a combination of testing and analytical procedures in that area, and have nothing to report. Cash investments and no longer debt for the district can all be confirmed with third parties. So again, there was no issues there to report. As Rihanna mentioned, we did have one matter that was new this year, which related to a resident complaint received directly by KPMG from the resident. And the complaint did reference the community charter. Therefore, we were required to report to you that we had received that letter and that we were addressing matters with staff. So this was late in the year that we got the letter. We met with management and went through the various complaints which related to potential errors in the 2023 financial statements, as well as issues with the financial plan. We went through everything in detail and agreed with management that there were no errors in the 2023 financial statements. We did come up with one minor thing that we noted in the 2023 financial statements, which was a minor wording change in the segment reporting note, which was not identified by the resident complaint, but did come about as with our deep discussions around everything that was in the letter. So KPMG has issued a letter back to management, just closing the matter. Further to that, we did end up meeting with the complainant, and I think we thoroughly explained that there were no errors in the 2023 financial statements. So we have moved on from this issue. The other new item that Rihanna mentioned was a couple minor control points. So I can report that we did not identify any significant deficiencies in internal controls, but we just came up with the minor recommendations that were kind of noticed throughout our testing. So the issue around review of journal entries, and then timely removal of deposits and permit or prepayments from developers, that kind of thing, which resulted in the error. There's a lot of items in there that are small, which I don't know that there's a lot of benefit from the review, and the review would be quite onerous. So we talked to management about that in the past, and so just with the one finding that we had this year, brought that forward as a recommendation to perhaps take a closer look at some of those things and do an exercise in ensuring that none of them should still be there. The only other thing in our findings is in the back, where I would usually identify for you if there were any future accounting standards changes in the public sector handbook that would impact the district's reporting. And there are a couple of items coming up for your 2027 year end. So a few years out now, there was changes in the conceptual framework and the financial statement presentation section. So we haven't gone too far in investigating what this might look like. But I think it might be an exercise in rearranging some of the statement of financial position, as well as adding an additional statement. I think that's it for the findings there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and just lastly, I'd like to thank management, Rihanna and Kanchana, and the team here for all of their work with us. I don't think it's that fun getting audited, but they provided everything we needed, and it was great working with them both for the first time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bates-Emer, is there questions? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one minor one. Thank you for the report. I don't have any questions really about the report. It's been thoroughly done, and I too congratulate our staff of basically having some minor suggestions, adjustments, but other than that, a clean audit. So I know the work that goes into it, and I appreciate that. The only question I do have, and that's really for staff in the summary, and I guess it's on page 3, and it is about the decrease of 1.1 million or 22% in the other receivables for the timing of the cyclical utility billings. And could you just perhaps remind me of what the cycle is on that? In other words, when does it rebalance?
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. I'll do my best. Water billing is actually is quite cyclical. It doesn't have pre-stated billing dates. So it'll have billing months, but not exact dates. So we'll monitor activity. We'll pull all that activity through that we gather through meters, apply the rates, and then generate the bills. And it'll be based on, the speed with which our staff will go out and get the meter reads done. At year end in particular, we ended up having, if you were to look in the prior year, we would have had more significant outstanding receivables because we would have done that billing just before year end. And then if you fast forward to this past year end, it would have done early January.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. That answers the question. If there aren't any other, I would be happy to move a motion.
Sure, I'll just go around the table here just first. If there's any other questions from members of council? I do not see any, so I'm happy to come back. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, the first, of course, that the KPMG 2024 audit findings report be received.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And also, I will move that the 2024 Statement of Financial Information be approved as presented.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that? That is the last motion in front of us, so I will just express on behalf of council our appreciation to the auditors and to staff. I'm in here every day and I see the teams working away for a long period of time to pull these things together. I know it's a grind to get through all of that, but I certainly appreciate the work KPMG does to make sure we're doing our part as a governance body on behalf of the public to make sure that oversight is done, and to staff for running a tight ship. We keep having these clean findings, so thank you to both of you. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Yeah, I think we do need to receive the staff report separately, so we'll do that. Moved, seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Moving on to item 7.2. This is a reconsideration of motion 2025-126 from the regular council meeting of March 10th. I believe I would probably don't need to turn to staff because the reconsideration is a purview of myself. So just for the public's interest and knowledge, this item, we thank you for all the people who have submitted input right through to this moment. But just so we understand where we're at here, we had a meeting on March 10th where this was first came before council. We had only 6 members of council able to attend that meeting, and there was an inability to find a path forward. We kept ending up in tie votes. So I have very few powers as a mayor, but one of them is reconsideration. So I announced at that meeting that I would bring it back, and we had the opportunity to have all 7 members of council present. So I am bringing this matter for reconsideration of the Henderson and Haultain-Estevan Neighbourhood Bikeways project. I just want to acknowledge we had a very robust public input on this, significant number of emails, both at its initial consideration and again for the meeting tonight, bolstered by a recent What We Heard report from a staff-led follow-up consultation in the area, particularly around where the east-west, north-south routes cross. Procedurally, under reconsideration, the primary resolution sits at the point where debate is closed and I call the question. So that's where I bring it back to, which is sort of the moment before I call the question. So I will in a moment invite a motion to reopen that motion for debate. So I just want to make sure that everybody at the table here and the members of the audience understand options in front of us. So if council moves and seconds and then votes to debate the original motion, that's what I would consider option number 1. That motion then acts as if it's freshly moved. We have a chance to debate, to move amendments, etc. If the motion to debate, to open it for debate fails, then I will simply call the question on the main motion. If that passes, then that concludes. If it fails, then we'll go to another option, and I have some suggestions about maybe perhaps moving some motions to advance what portions are supported clearly by council on that. So any of them will come back here. So I consider that to be sort of the additive approach where we take options and move them forward. and obviously can be added to later as well. I'm just going to see if there's anything else here. I don't think I need to. Yeah, I guess maybe for clarification, the debate by amendment approach, assumes the bulk of the design is satisfactory. And my understanding of the process there would be the design with amendments would be referred back to staff, with the amendments providing clear instructions to guide staff in the areas of rework. Obviously, it has the advantage of ensuring the whole design is considered as one coherent route, but of course, some disadvantage in requiring some delay for the whole project while those redesigns happen. And if that approach doesn't work and we go to additive motions, we'd move, and I have some suggestion motions to move that, debate the design in parts. That would certainly give clarity about what council sees as supportable today. I can move those forward. But I would say that it has the advantage of speeding up some aspects, but it has the downside of then sort of breaking apart the project into multiple mini projects. So with that, and I would just say before we even get there, and out of respect for bringing back the one whole motion from March 10th, we will only use option 3 if options 1 and 2 can't find a path forward. So with that, I'm going to turn to members of this council. Is there a member of council that wishes to move that we reopen the matter for debate? Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. We can debate the option to reopen for debate, I believe, Ms. Plouffe, or is it just a procedural motion that has no debate?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's just a procedural motion.
Okay.
You wouldn't debate it.
Thank you. Simplifies my life. So the motion here is to reopen the matter for debate. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed. And we do have Councillor Braithwaite online. If you wish to speak against something, I'll try and give enough time there to get you come in, but there was enough hands raised in favor on that one that any motion opposed would not have mattered. So we're here now, option 2, which is to look at potential debate either on the main motion, or if people wish to move amendments that are also in order, but maybe just if there's any broad statements about the motion. I'll go there. If people wish to see us, consider the main motion as a whole, we can do that. Otherwise, we take amendments. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
I'm happy to move the main motion. Would you like me to read it out?
The main motion is live on the floor. There's no need to read it.
Okay. I do have a number of amendments to provide when the time is appropriate. Would that be now?
So motions are always to amend are always in order procedurally. So if you wish to go ahead, please do.
Thank you. I'd like to add an amendment to the motion that staff work with the consultant to pursue additional traffic calming measures for Florence and Epworth Streets.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Moved and seconded. You can go ahead and motivate, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. There was good discussion around this at our last meeting, and I think we struggled to figure out a motion that wouldn't put ourselves in the uncomfortable position of traffic engineer, while recognizing that there will be an impact in moving Florence forward as a bikeway to Epworth Street. In addition to that, there was great input from our community around how Epworth is already a cycling street and will probably maintain one. So I think it was very convincing to me in conversations with residents that it would be better to be proactive rather than wait for the inevitable problems that might ensue if we don't look at both of those streets for additional traffic calming measures.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I support the traffic calming measures for those areas also.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
I think I was the lone member that was not at the table on March the 10th, but I will support this amendment for additional traffic calming.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands popping up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? That started the process now to be referring this matter back to staff. But go ahead, Councillor Smart, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I have another amendment to put forward, so I'd like to move that staff return to council with a nature-oriented design for the Carrick Greenway that balances enhancing the Greenway as a pocket park while providing improved and safe access as a transportation corridor for all users.
Moved and seconded, thank you. You have the floor if you wish.
Thank you. One of the most significant things that came out of some of the great conversations I had with residents was how special this area is to both the immediate neighborhood, but to the community as a whole. And I really heard how important it is to design this area as a special greenway space and really prioritize the nature aspects of this area. And so that's the intent of where this motion is coming from, a bit of a nature first approach, recognizing it is currently a bikeway. And so finding a better balance between prioritizing a nature space, perhaps making it even more enhanced than it is now, while still providing some ability for it to be part of the network. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Green. Oh, sorry, Councillor Patterson, sorry, you wanted to speak more broadly, is that correct? Not to the motion? Sorry, I saw your hand, I took it as wanting to speak in general. Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Green, to the motion on the floor, the amendment motion.
Yeah, I appreciate the thought behind this, but I will not be able to support this motion. What I would prefer is to see the Carrick Trail eliminated from the plan entirely. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Appleton, and then Patterson, and then Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, in support of the amendment on the floor. Yeah, similarly heard from lots of folks raising concerns about that specific section of the Carrick Trail, and one of the outcomes of council designating the Henderson Haultain route as the desired route for north-south means having to achieve some compromises around the existing greenway, and certainly have heard loud and clear that there's some compromise needed there, and there are some design changes that need to get made. So I think it's eminently possible for us to look at a different design for that section that achieves the goal of greater and just sort of better access for all, but addressing things like speeds and preservation of the natural environment that the community has raised. So I think I have great confidence that we can achieve a compromise on that section that does both things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I have Councillor Patterson and then Watson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will not support the motion that is put forward to us now. I do appreciate that it is brought forward basis the listening to the community. However, I too would at this time preserve the Carrick Trail as a naturalized trail connector in the Henderson East Down neighborhood. And I think that to begin the redesign of this at this point in time, particularly because we are also going to be looking at redevelopment of Carnarvon Park, is very premature. I think that the area, although it is highlighted as a bit of a cycling travel route at this point in time, for those of us who travel it frequently, we know it mostly as a pedestrian route, and it does provide somewhat of a safe travel route to all age groups, but particularly for the day camp users from Oak Bay Rec Center and the day care center users who are very firm in their opinions that it needs to be maintained as a very slow travel pace to accommodate those small users of the trail. And certainly it is in keeping with the original 2011 report that we have heard so much about, that trail be preserved as a green trail. In fact, in that report, it was to continue all the way up, and eventually a trail was to connect with Henderson Rec Center at the north. And that has been largely the way that it has been used by the district. Also, in considering that it is presented as an alternative route for cycling, when a cycling route does already exist, the cycling route on Fall Bay Road does provide a path on a wide street with good visibility that connects both to Saanich and the city of Victoria. So I think it would be very premature to try to move ahead with redesign at this point in time, knowing that certainly all of the, particularly the children's group that will use it to travel to hopefully a newly redeveloped Carnarvon Park, is better eliminated at this point in time. And once we have more knowledge about both what will happen at Carnarvon Park and the phasing of Carnarvon Park, it would be considered at that time. I also take into consideration that the operators of the program for the day camp and the daycares were very firm in stating that they thought that it was extremely important to keep the maze gates in place to ensure that any cycles that were on the trail did in fact keep a very leisurely pace and not encumber any of the youthful people that are using it. Thank you.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Mayor. I am really happy to support this motion. The input from folks in the community, although it's a stretch that I know because I do cycle through it sometimes, I went back and took a close look at, and it really is it has some really beautiful characteristics, and I can totally understand why those who use it, whether they live directly next to it or use it as part of their daily routine or their monthly routine, why maintaining those characteristics or enhancing them are important. I think it's also important that it remain part of the network. Everybody, whether walking or driving or cycling, wants the straightest and most direct routes to where they're going to go. And that route starts for many people at UVic and comes down Henderson and comes through there and then would take us down through to the village as that route is planned for. So I think that's a good thing, to keep that route. I strongly disagree that Foul Bay is a good alternative. I commuted to Camosun College at Lansdowne for years. I would never go down Foul Bay. The speed of the vehicles, the rapid and unpredictable movement from side streets right into the bike lane make it not absolutely unsafe in its current form to be used as an alternative route. So I just don't think that proposing that we move a section of it along Foul Bay is in anybody's interest. So I do want to put that to one side. I also think that at the moment the route is used it can only really be used by pedestrians and bikes, which is a good thing, and that's how it will be continue to be used. I think 2 or 3 cars need to get through there occasionally because properties need to access their driveways through it. So it becomes a little bit of a driveway, but it's not a driven route. It's how I access my own parking. So I think that's good. So already it provides this sense that it's a calmer shared space. I think, however, at the moment, that route is not pedestrian friendly. If I were a pedestrian with a mobility impairment, if I were a pedestrian in a wheelchair, if I were pedestrian with any number of physical impairments, portions of that route are really not passable. You would need assistance in order to make that transit. So I don't think it meets the requirements for being a good pedestrian route quite yet, and I think that some of what's proposed in the design, which if this motion were approved, we're asking for it to be modified to make it a better space for all those users, all kinds of pedestrians, anybody in wheels. And I think behaviors with some really nice changes in place, people will accommodate each other. They're not going to barrel through and cycle down the after-school grade 1s and 2s. They're going to pay attention to each other as they do in other places. So I think it's a lovely idea to spend more time in this space to help preserve and enhance the characteristics that people really value. And I'm going to vote in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. I have Councillor Braithwaite, then I'll say a few words and I'll go back for second-time speakers. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, Mayor. I'll keep my comments very short. I would concur with Councillor Patterson's comments, and so we'll be voting against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So my take on this is maybe a little different than others. I'll support the motion. I think that if we're going to send this whole package back to staff, we need them to look at changes to this. That's how I'm reading this motion. I think that some of the comments raised or by the public are legitimate. I think that we want to keep this as a more naturalized space, perhaps avoid removing the large rock outcroppings, accepting a little bit of gradient change and so forth on here. And so I think not to do that at this table is appropriate. I think if we're going to send it back, this is the right, we need to do it this way. There's no other real option for it. I don't think just saying we're not going to look at it is the right answer. You know, I might fiddle with the wording a little bit, but I think what I would take from this is that the staff would come back with some aspect of it that respects the green space, and I would take that as probably less widening, more protection of the trees, etc. That being said, I'm probably gonna have a hard time supporting the overall motion, just because I think that I still struggle with the overall scale and cost of the project, and I think that we may want to take a more incremental approach. So that would be my preference, but I think my role here right now is, even if I don't support the overall motion, is to support the changes in here that I think give it the maximum chance of having a successful outcome. Councillor Green?
Thank you. I'm going to take a different approach, and I'm going to talk about our values in the community for green space, and also for the Cool Kit program, which this trail now is a part of, I understand. The neighborhood has worked very hard on the area, pulling ivy and planting native plants and so on. I think a lot of activity has occurred in the last few months or weeks. But here's the thing. We don't live in Central Oak Bay. All of us are blessed to live in either South Oak Bay. Yeah, you live in Central Oak Bay, but you have a lot of green space around you. This is the only green, truly green rural feel trail that this neighborhood has. There are no other trails like it. There are no other green spaces like it. And yet in South Oak Bay, we have so many alternatives, green spaces, alleys, parks. I'm really concerned that this is an important, I know how important it is to the neighborhood because I listened to all of their comments. I have read all of their reports. I've read staff reports also. I just think, why would we alter a natural green space when it doesn't really require altering? I mean, people still ride through it. You have Foul Bay Road, although Councillor Watson has pointed out it's not particularly the best route, perhaps, but it is the main corridor north and south. You have other streets in this area that are alternate bike routes, like Wootton, Newton, and so on. This trail is very special, and I couldn't walk the tours, but someone kindly drove me all around the area, and they drove me right into the trail as far as we could go. And I see how special it is for that area. That all those neighborhoods use that as primary green space, and a very special place for children and families and daycare. So it isn't just about cycling. It is about preserving natural green space, which we talk so much about in Oak Bay, and we say we really care about it. And that's why I would like to see it left alone. I don't think it needs altering. I think what it needs is preservation. And I think that would be a really goodwill gesture for Central Oak Bay neighborhoods there.
Thank you. So I'm just going to, yeah, it's fine. I will just ask. So we're going to have, I think, a fair bit of diversity of opinion tonight on things. And I just, I think there's going to be people here who have supporting one version. We heard a woohoo on the Foul Bay issue and more on some of these pieces. I just want to make sure that we just leave this as a fairly quiet, respectful contemplation space for that. We've certainly heard from everybody loud and clear through the correspondence about the various opinions. And I just ask that we don't turn this into a cheering and jeering gallery as we go through this debate piece. But I'm also going to ask that council, if we go through this, we may have a fair bit of debate on a number of items. So I'm just going to ask everybody if we can try and keep our comments to maybe a minute or so, just keep our pieces short, because I do want to get through this piece of business tonight with a meaningful move forward. So everybody has spoken once. Anybody else wish to add anything else to the discussion? I do have Councillor Smart and then Councillor Patterson for a second time.
Yeah, thank you. This motion that staff return for another touch point to council with a nature-oriented design for the Carrot Greenway is about respecting the fact that it is such a neighborhood gem, but it is not in a perfect situation to be part of this bikeway. If we extract it out and say we're excluding that from the bikeway, it's still actually in the bikeway because we're actually doing bikeway improvements at either end of it. We at very least are going to need to consider signs that are on that bikeway that say that everyone has to yield to pedestrians. There's at least a light touch that has to happen here. And I think there's an importance as we do this work that is complete streets, that we actually look at enhancing this area that the neighborhood cares so much about. So this motion is not about disrespecting the gem that place is. It's about recognizing the fact that if we're actually going to go ahead with this project and do a bikeway, there's no way of excluding this park unless we say we're not doing this entire project because it's in the middle. So I think at very least we need to have staff look at this from a nature-based approach and come back to the council table to have another touch point to decide what we're going to do with it, as opposed to just exit out and have some of the exasperating issues that are happening already with conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists continue to get worse.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I guess I will come back to Councillor Watson's comments about, you know, it is the most sensible route then for cyclists to travel. That would be an indicator that it is expected then that cyclist travel will go up. But we know both from the CRD, Regional Growth Indicators Report for 2024, we know from our own survey that while pedestrian use of the space is the predominant mode of active transportation over cycling, we are limiting with greater certainty the loss of safe spaces, attractive spaces that are restricted in some way to the safe travel by pedestrians. We will lose the Bowker Creek walkway, certainly to bicycles, and Elgin is part of this. And so, I mean, I understand, and I'm willing to concede on certain things, but I certainly wouldn't even want that Elgin portion to become just a cycling route without having pedestrian improvements all down Foul Bay Road, because somewhere pedestrians must also have some guarantee of safety. And certainly with the adaptation of more of the cycling to e-bikes, an e-bike traveling at some of the speeds that it does through all of these zones, we're converting them all to really more of a pathway for rolling vehicles than for people on foot. And it leaves me wondering if this community in fact wants pedestrian traffic anymore. If we narrow the lanes so that it is more environmentally friendly, then we will have closer travel between pedestrians and cyclists. That's not a good option in my opinion, because you know, you can put yield to pedestrians. I can say that is already not happening even on the Bowker Creek part of it. So it will take all of these pedestrian sheltered, somewhat tranquil areas to travel safely in, and force pedestrians out of them, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I have Councillor Appleton remaining on my list before I call the question. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. Just in the terms of, you know, any alignment that is selected as an active transportation corridor requires compromise. This redesign or this amendment is speaking to try to achieve a good compromise for an alignment which council itself chose. So this was the north-south alignment that council directed be evaluated in place of the other routes. So I note that we've talked a lot through this process about the Foul Bay corridor, and at the time that this came before council, I certainly favored the Cadborough Bay alignment, but that was not the will of council to explore either of those things at the time. Both of those are included in the active transportation plan, were included as options for council, and this was the option that council selected. So I think that it is incumbent on us to respond to what the community is telling us, incorporate that feedback, and try to come up with the best solution for this option which council has selected, while taking into account what the community has told us. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. So the motion on the floor is amendment to include in the request for staff redesign this corridor, the corridor along the Carrot Trail or Henderson Trail. So that's the motion. So if the motion passes, that will be included in the ask for redesign from staff. Fails, it does not. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and those opposed? I have Councillor
Opposed.
Patterson, Braithwaite, and Green opposed. That does carry, so that will go back for consideration of redesign. Councillor Patterson, I'm just going to make sure I move around the table a little bit to let other people, if they have other motions to make or anything. Councillor Patterson, did you wish to add something else to this? We have a motion right now on the floor to amend the design. Is there anything else you wish to add? Sorry, I just saw your hand earlier, so I thought you might have wanted something. If not, I can go back to other speakers.
Yes, thank you. I would like to also add that we refer back to staff for bringing forward to information to council on the east-west bike connection on Estevan at Cadborough Bay Road. And we ask staff to provide an impact analysis of the proposed changes on the loading zone restrictions and traffic flow in the commercial area.
You're going to have to read that aloud again.
Yes, to, at this point, defer the east-west bike connection on Estevan Avenue at Cadborough Bay Road and direct staff to provide impact analysis of proposed changes on the loading zone restrictions and traffic flow in the commercial zone.
So not asking for changes, just asking for impact assessments on that section.
Yes, I think it's premature to ask for any changes until we understand the dynamics of that space. Certainly, most of us who frequent the space know how very busy that corner
So
is.
actually, before I do that, I'm just going to see if there's a seconder for the motion.
Okay.
And moved and seconded. Okay, so go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. And, just twice in the past week, as I have been going by the corner, there have been vehicles traveling actually on the pedestrian sidewalk, trying to get around commercial vehicles that are in the loading zone. I recognize that the loading zone is an important function for village merchants in that area, and certainly the shops are well supported by the community. However, it seems that with the difficulty of the situation as it exists today, adding the bike lanes to that particular crossing will add more complexity, not simplify and produce safety on the corner.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I might, given it's been moved and seconded, I just want to make sure that staff understand what the ask is here, just to make sure that we should have a sense of that. Mr. Rennick, you're the man in the room. Perhaps I'll turn to you to get a sense if you understand what the request is when asking for an impact analysis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The note that I took down was that the east-west connection at Estevan and Cadborough Bay Road be deferred until staff returns with impacts on traffic flow and loading zones for the commercial area. So with the spirit of the motion that council is currently debating, my understanding is that at such time that staff returns with modified design, we could also bring commentary for council's consideration on what is being proposed in that location and what the impacts would be. Just want to make sure that I'm understanding that correctly.
I'm getting nods from the mover, so we'll say yes. Thank you, Mr. Rennick. That is the motion on the floor. Discussion? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just an observation about not the ask per se, but that once the design, if the design is presented, were implemented, it will change behavior. And one of the things that I note from the design as it's presented is that it will now do the whole retail strip a favor by dead stopping folks who right now may move far too quickly through the zone because the priority is given to the east-west route as opposed to the north-south one, which I think is a good thing, because there is so much pedestrian traffic going east-west already at that intersection that really signaling that that's the priority direction, I think would be an important thing. It's going to improve safety for all. And I just, if this comes back at the same time as we're then approving a revised plan for the bits that are in our amendments, I think that's great, but I wouldn't want to stop it moving forward, because I think that also, even after implementation, there would be things that could be policy changes or small changes that could address any problems. For example, using a couple of parking spaces as loading zones only through particular hours of the day. I think there are creative solutions that can still make it work better for everybody. So I do like the idea of investigating that, but I wouldn't, if it came to that, want to hold up the whole project just to wait for that review. I think that there are adjustments that could be made that would address loading zone problems.
Councillor Watson, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. And I certainly don't have a problem with analyzing the potential effects in that area. Just a couple of notations. I do point out that in my time on council has actually reconsidered that parking, that loading zone. I recall that loading zone was established and sort of codified in response to an existing safety concern, which had commercial buildings parking in the alleys and crossing across Estevan at that location. So I'm not sure what other alignment of the loading zone would achieve a safer outcome, or would pertain to that already has been specifically selected in order to resolve a problem, as I recall. And the other thing that I'll just point out is that further to some comments, and this has come up various times during this debate, is noting bad driver conduct. And bad driving and poor driving is the responsibility of the person operating the vehicle. And the existence of a bike lane on a route is unlikely to solve people who wish to break the law using their vehicles. So I would be hesitant to delay the implementation of a bike lane for fear of people operating their motor vehicles in an unsafe fashion, because unfortunately it's far too widespread as it is. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Any other discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I appreciate this being brought up. I think more information is helpful. We want to get this right. So I definitely appreciate the spirit of the motion. And while I'm uncomfortable with the wording of the motion, starting with defer work, what I hear from staff and I believe is the spirit of the motion is that we will receive more information in a timely way so that we could potentially delay implementation should need be, but hopefully we get information in time to actually just do it right. So I'm going to look beyond the uncomfortable wording of the motion, starting with defer work, and just go to what I'm hearing as the intention, which I think is great. We really want to make sure that this is not an issue going forward.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? So the motion is asking for additional information to come out of the Estevan-Cadbro Bay intersection. I appreciate the comments that have been made so far on this one. My instinct on this one is not to support it. I think this is one of the ones that I think has had a fairly thorough consideration of how traffic is going to cross and be managed. And I don't know that, I think if there's issues that come up, we need to be ready to manage it. But I'm not sure that this is the best use of time and energy at this point for that particular intersection. So I'm struggling a little bit with the wording that it's there. I understand the intention of having more information. I just wish I felt more comfortable that it would provide something meaningful, because we don't really have a good sense of this until the buttons go in and we see what traffic is there and how they flow. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to fall on this one, to be totally honest. I do appreciate the intent of which is done. I just think, if we're going to spend time and money, I'm not sure this is the best way. I'm going to go to any of the first-time speakers before I go back to Councillor Patterson. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate what you say, but do we actually have data on it?
Sure, I might even ask that question of staff in the process of doing the initial 90% design. Is staff aware of any traffic studies and things that were on that corner that were looked at as part of the evaluation process? Appreciating most of that was done by consultants, so maybe not first-hand knowledge.
Through the mayor, I'm not aware of any specific counts being done at that loading zone.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. That may change my mind on that. Councillor Watson, and then I'll call the question.
Yes, thank you. I'd like a clarification maybe from the mover. I mean, the motion may say something a little broader than what I'm hearing in the final discussion. Are we just talking about the loading zone? That's not what I heard. I heard that we were talking about overall. Well, maybe I'll go back to the mover, to Councillor Patterson, please.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There were actually three loading zones, but two were we had conversations at council about. The one that that runs north-south on Cadboro Bay Road and is a loading zone, and then the one that runs east-west, right adjacent to the crosswalk. And the width of the street and the width of the commercial vehicles that are on that street do not leave very much space for, I wouldn't walk down the street simply because the street is so narrow that there are residential cars that park up on the sidewalk, not totally over the sidewalk, but certainly using a good portion of it, just because otherwise certainly the commercial vehicles wouldn't be able to get down. Our own public works vehicles would not be able to travel the street. So I think that to just proceed with continuing the bike path down there with no regard for do we understand what the traffic flow is? Do we understand how many vehicles are there? What the hours of use is? I think is not a wise use of dollars until we actually determine those things to make the final decisions on the safest way to traverse the areas for all users. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question on the motion. This is an amendment motion to seek additional information on that intersection. Not seeing any other hands. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Watson, Appleton opposed. That will carry. We have the main motion now with three amendments in front of us. Councillor Smart?
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to add that post-implementation, staff explore measures such as parking permits and increased enforcement to address parking issues along the route.
Thank you. Can you just read it one more time and I'll seek a seconder?
That post-implementation, staff explore measures such as parking permits and increased enforcement to address parking issues along the route.
Okay, thank you. I normally ask for that probably as we get to implementation, but I think it's being done in the spirit of trying to make sure that people are comfortable with a plan will come ahead. Go ahead, Councillor. Was there a seconder? Sorry? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart, as you wish to.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to ensure that this is addressed. We've heard strongly from the community that there are existing parking issues that are only going to be further exacerbated, and I heard many creative solutions as to how we can ensure that this doesn't negatively impact the community. And so I just want to make sure that we really catch this point and track it throughout so that we're really finding the best solutions for the neighborhood to not have increased parking issues.
Thank you. Councillor Green?
Thank you. I just have a question for you to Councillor Smart. Do you envision residents-only parking as well as part of the mix for any suggested remedy? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I really didn't want to dictate the solutions, but yes, that might be one of the solutions, but I don't want to insinuate that I have the expertise for what is needed there.
Continue.
I think this is an important point. I think parking has been a long-standing issue in this neighborhood area, not just for the past, period of time that we've been involved and aware, but for years. So I think anything that we can do to help analyze and alleviate that, because I don't believe a parking study has been done, and I believe it should be. And there is a proposal for increased density in the area on Easttown, so this would be critical. I will support this amendment.
Councillor Appleton?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, eminently supportable amendment, just because, we have heard loud and clear from the community concerns about parking. And I think that at this particular juncture, implementing and noting the lack of data about parking usage and parking constituency, if you will, around that area. So coming in a post implementation period, with the prospect of additional developments being proposed for the area, I think is very timely, a time to be accumulating that data and receiving that data to be able to see, to be able to speak from a position of knowledge as we talk about, any future redevelopment in the area. So I think it's eminently supportable and reacts to the community's concerns about evaluating what the impacts on parking will be. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Speaking against the motion, I certainly appreciate what the intent is of the motion. However, post-implementation is after the fact. And after the fact will not necessarily identify issues that could be resolved in advance. I am also very aware that the Advisory Planning Commission in their March meeting, because an application has already come for greater density, and their recommendation, which when it comes to council, the application will, their recommendation will follow, and that is that a parking and transportation study be done in advance so that decisions can be made wisely with the knowledge of what exists, what the existing conditions are today, and how that might be impacted and going forward by any proposed densification. And so certainly they were wanting it sooner rather than later, and certainly not post-implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson and Green.
Thank you. I'm really happy to support this motion. I think further information about impacts in the area where it is fairly obvious by visual inspection if you go through there that curb space is at a premium is really important to do. But I would argue that post-implementation is the appropriate time to do it, because once the new way of doing things is implemented, people's behavior is going to change. That's the whole point of having the bikeway itself, is to slow vehicles, make cyclists and other users feel safer in the area. And once parking spaces are removed to do things like allow room for bump outs to make the whole area calmer, people will have to make decisions about what they're going to do with their vehicles. And so there may be some consequences of that are actually positive that we can't possibly predict until the framework goes into place. If it makes things worse, then we know what we're working with when we've done it. If it makes things better, we know we've got a different problem to evaluate. So I think post-implementation is the right thing, and I would separate it from any consideration of parking impacts related to a single development. This is about creating a network that's safe for all users, and then making sure that some other needs are addressed. A specific development, yes, they can look at their individual parking effects, and that's quite distinct from this linear thing that we're creating. So I don't see, although the Advisory Planning Commission has recommended a parking study for the development, they weren't recommending one for the bikeway. So I just want to I think that's an important distinction, although, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Patterson. So I like the motion as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Green for a second time.
Thank you. I did indicate my support, but I think Councillor Patterson makes a good point. Would the mover be open to adding pre-implementation where appropriate, as well as post-implementation? And that would be my suggestion. And I think to the point of planning around a specific housing proposal, I think the point is this area has been incredibly dense for a long time. Traffic and parking have been incredibly problematic for a very long time, not just in the recent months or discussion. It's been going on, I believe around 10 years. There have been concerns in this area. And so if we would maybe adjust our thinking about a pre-implementation plan to ensure that we're on the right track, and then post-implementation to see what the impacts are, I think that would make sense. Thank you.
I'll go back to the mover. If she wishes to amend her motion, she's welcome to do so. Otherwise, I'll go to the next speaker in the list.
Yeah, thank you. I will not be changing my motion as proposed, but I would suggest that should this motion fail, that perhaps another motion might be entertained. But I am, working in architecture and doing lots of projects, and we're about to change a whole bunch of things. It doesn't make sense to me as the mover to study a situation that's about to change. So my motion is worded from the point of view of looking at the consultant's design and dealing with it as it produces change in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Appleton, and then I don't want to go for a third time, but I will if I need to. Go ahead, Councillor Green or Appleton.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for a second time. What we've heard so much from the community through this whole process is the interest in safer streets. Everybody that I've talked to, no matter what their perspective on, is looking for safer streets. And there's so much on the table right now with the design, including with these really great amendments that have been passed tonight in terms of like design improvements at Florence and Epworth, and looking at how we can do better with the design on the Carrick Trail and all the other components that are in the design already that we haven't talked about because we talked about them a couple of months ago. But things like improvements, the crossing at Fowl Bay and Haultain is in there, and there's a lot of other really, really great safety improvements. And so what I've heard everybody say is, safety is what our outcome here is, and this is what this design can achieve. And again, compromise is key, and a fear of compromise can have us end up accepting less safe streets than what everybody's telling us that we really, really want here. And so the parking is a trade-off, and it is a compromise. And so we need to analyze, in my view, move forward with creating these safer streets and these safer environments that everybody's told us that they want. Let's move forward with that. But at the same time, let's analyze the impact of parking that people have raised to us and use that to inform future decision making, both on the development side and in future designs of active transportation corridors. So I think we can do both. I think we can move forward with our safety improvements that everybody said that they want, and also do this post-implementation analysis of parking impacts and respond appropriately. There may very well be outcomes that we need to address when that data comes back to us. So I think we can actually do both, and I think we can do it with this timing. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I agree with Councillor Appleton. I think we are all interested in safety aspects to this. But safety it's not just dependent upon vehicles. Certainly e-bikes are ranking in there. But I just would like to comment that it has been my experience that the best way to measure whether something has performed up to expectations is to understand what the starting point was in advance. Otherwise, it's very hard to gauge whether it's been successful at all. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're necessary, if you've ended up where you wanted to be or not. So that would be my comment, and I think that implementing the studies after, post-implementation of this, really won't help council's decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The motion on the floor is to ask for the parking study. Again, in the spirit of, I think, go ahead. Actually, I'm going to speak for a first time here, just since I have the floor. I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. I don't think it resolves all the issues, but I do think that if this main motion passes, I'd rather make sure that we don't stop and we continue to look at the impacts of this. Again, I still reserve some concerns about the overall proposal that's in front of us, but we'll get there when we get there. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that my motion didn't particularly suggest a parking study. It might include that because my motion is quite broad, but it asked staff to explore various measures, one of which might include a traffic study, but because the wording changed along the way, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And again, supportive of it. I still reserve some concerns around the actual parking lots that's proposed as part of this before we get there. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
You like to know why we oppose motions, and I will just say, you know, I respect Councillor Smart's comments and others as well, but democracy is messy, and I will not be supporting this motion now. I was hoping for an amendment, but that's the way it goes. Thank you.
Motion on the floor right now is an amendment to include a look at impacts of traffic, et cetera, on the area after the project is done. That's the motion. It's not the main motion. It's just a motion to amend. So those in favor of that amendment will vote in favor. And call the question. All those in favor and opposed? I have Councillor Patterson.
Opposed.
And Green and myself opposed. Thank you. That does carry. And, did I not say Braithwaite?
No, you said
Braithwaite.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson. I think I looked from there to you and somehow your name popped into my head. That's always a bad sign if that starts happening at only 8:40. I'll try and keep myself a bit more focused here. So sorry, Councillor Braithwaite, Green, Patterson opposed. That does carry. Are there any other motions to amend? So I'm going to bring it back to this table. Then we have no more motions on the floor that I see to amend. So now we will start, if we wish, anybody who wishes to speak to the motion that's on the floor. This is approving the design as presented with 4 amendments, one post-implementation, mind you. I will go around the table. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to reconsider this motion and to have more carefully looked at some of the amendments that we could make to really address some of the community's concerns. It's really important if we're going to be going to this cost to implement this network, that it is a continuous network. And so I do hear around the table a lot of concerns still around the Carrot Greenway. I also have a lot of concerns around that. And I just want to point out that the amendment simply asks for the staff to return to us with a design. It doesn't mean that there's another touch point there, the result of which might be to do very little. We don't know yet. So I just want to make it clear that that amendment is another touch point with council, in case that's a sticking point for some councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. And so those speaking to the main motion as amended, go ahead, Councillor Green.
Just for clarity, could you read the entire motion to me, please? Given that I wasn't here on March the 10th, I had watched it online, but that was a challenge, I think. I was on pain meds at the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you not attending while you were on pain meds.
I should have taken them tonight too, but anyway. Legally unable.
So,
if you
yeah,
could just,
so-
if you could review the main motion, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, the main motion is basically approval that the detailed designs for Henderson and Haultain-Estevan neighborhood bikeways be endorsed as presented. So if you go to the package, it's pages 50 to 66 are the road drawings, and that includes all the changes contained therein. So that is the motion on the floor. We've had 3 motions to amend. We had motions, sorry, I've lost my page of changes to the Carrick Greenway passed, additional traffic calming for Florence and Epworth specifically, and after parking study, and then of course the request for more information around the Estevan Cadbro Bay loading zones. Those are the 4 amendments, but the main motion is essentially is to approve everything with those 3 changes.
Which is option 1, correct?
Yes, well, because we're reconsidering it, it was option 1 in the original report. That's we're bringing. I had to choose one of the motions to bring it back to. It seemed simplest to bring it back to the original motion that had everything in, and then we could deal with this in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton.
Just a point of clarification, Your Worship, just on the definition of the option in front of us. Note from the original report that the option 1 was based on a 90% design. So my understanding is that moving forward with the detailed design for Henderson and Haultain-Estevan neighborhood bikeways, in the original report was a 90% design, meaning that before it will go out to further, well, if the motion passes, then the amendments directed by council would be entertained, and also leaving space for any potential revisions based on last minute information to be provided. So in terms of it is not my understanding, and you can put this to staff if you would like, but my understanding is that there is still room at a 90% design to adapt certain components of the design which are not, which respond to specific needs on the ground, not largely material ones, I would say not large redesign pieces, but still has the ability to respond to concerns raised at the street level.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I think that deserves some clarification. My understanding of this is that once we approve the 90% design, the staff have wiggle room to make final changes, but it doesn't come back here for approval of those. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to try and ask a clarifying question because the language of the motion, of the amending motion that Councillor Smart brought forward had staff returning to council. There is also language in the motion regarding the east-west connection at Cadbro Bay Road, return to council. In the March 10th report, there was an option 2, which was that council could choose to request modifications to the design.
Yep.
And it said that the detailed designs be modified by changing the design assumptions as follows. I think that's actually the path that council is proceeding along, is asking that the design be modified according to this motion and that it return to council for approval. I just want council to be clear on that so that I'm clear on that.
Sure, no, clarity is always worthwhile. So that is my understanding as well. This is effectively option 2, taking the main motion, adding amendments. Those amendments with the design changes will come back to council for approval. Those still remain, as I understand it, as a 90% design. We would approve the 90% design. It would not go away and come back as 100% design for approval. Is that, or would it come back one more time?
I would say that realistically, I'm sorry, I didn't wait for you to call on me.
Through me to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that procedurally what would make the most sense is that staff comes back with an issued for construction or 100% design, which council could still issue minor modifications to. But at this point, really the difference between a 90% design and a 100% design is not material. So I would just be looking to avoid, if this motion passes, we're going to have to take it away. We're going to have to come back to council in a few months. I would want to avoid a third council touch point if unless it's absolutely necessary. If council were to direct at that next touch point that they would like to see it again, that would be council's prerogative.
Thank you. Is that clear? Everybody? Okay. So the motion on the floor, if people wish, I'm assuming people wish to speak to the main motion as amended, but you do not have to. Go around the table one more time here. Councillor Watson and then Green.
Yes, I'd like to speak to the main motion as amended. I think from my perspective, it's been really hugely beneficial to hear additional local input to describe the experience of users who live in proximity to some portions of this route, particularly along Florence, and particularly those who are, feel very near and dear to the Carrot Greenway. So I think that has directed some changes tonight, which are really effective compromises. I think that overall, the compromises work in the favor of both groups, the immediate local users and the broader community users, who are also telling us quite strongly, vociferously, and in great numbers, that we need to move forward with this. So finding the compromise and the right balance, I think, is achieved with this motion. And I really hope that we can find a way forward tonight in order to bring this about, as our community expects us to do.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Then Councillor Appleton, did you wish to speak to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Green. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor, I do appreciate that this round is at least attempting to compromise. I'm still thinking about it. I don't know that I fully support it. And the reason for that is I see that so many of our pedestrian routes are being compromised. And, we do hear a lot. We have to keep up with City of Victoria and with Saanich, but I certainly am very personally aware of the fact that Victoria implemented cycling routes and ended up having a case against them for human rights because of those with disabilities. And so I think that we have focused a lot on cycling aspects, but I think we have focused less on those with disabilities and just the pedestrian traffic that exists in Oak Bay and makes this community what it is. So I'll listen to certainly the discussion around the table. I'm still, I don't know that I am sold because I really haven't seen any changes that advance good pedestrian travel. Everything that is done is just for crossings. It's not, it doesn't address sidewalk conditions, but it does certainly address cycling. So I'll wait and listen to comments around the table. Thank you.
Councillor Green, then Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the comments tonight. Thank you, staff, as well, for input and reporting. I was hoping for option 2, and I did support most of these amendments, but there are other amendments that I was seeking to see included. Certainly, it included not including the Carrick Trail in this plan, identifying all of the safety elements, and there was a list. I also was hoping that there would be no reduction of parking, particularly in this neighborhood. Easttown is identified as having 14 parking spaces removed, and believe me, when I attended the neighborhood gathering walk, which I couldn't do the walk, but I did go and park over there on the 29th of April, and I had to park in a yellow zone because there was no parking, and that was at 7 o'clock at night. So I think we have to be very careful about how we eliminate this parking, which is why the pre-implementation study would have been helpful. I think we have more work to do on the parking elimination after spending time in this neighborhood with all of the residents who have to live with the changes that we make. So I will not support the main motion, unfortunately, but I also want to make it clear that I agree that we have to look for pedestrian-friendly improvements as well. And for a lot of people, cycling you know, pedestrian walking is one of the primary, according to the data I've looked at, is one of the primary activities in Oak Bay. It is not cycling. So I think that's something we have to keep in mind, but we have to find a balance between both of these active transportation endeavors. And I agree with Councillor Patterson. I'm not sure we have enough emphasis in this plan on the pedestrian aspects after spending time in the neighborhood and with the neighbors and attending their meetings. So thank you.
Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. So speaking in favor of the motion that's on the floor, and similarly to, you know, all of my colleagues, you know, I'm just really pleased at how the process has gone down and how much feedback we've received and how much of the feedback from the community has been incorporated into these amendments that have been put forward tonight. So I think there's been a lot of really thoughtful discussion. And again, you know, sort of, I return to my statement about compromise, that any option that we select will require compromise. And we've endorsed an active transportation strategy that has certain routes on it, and this was the route that was put forward by council. And we need to be very transparent and honest with the community that any of those options that we select will require compromise. We could have gone with a north-south route on Cadborough Bay, which would have affected the pedestrian and street environment quite a bit less, but there are compromises to be had there as well in terms of parking on those streets and those types of impacts. So no active transportation implementation will come without compromise. So this is just something that's really, really key about it. I think we just need to be really, really honest about that and be forthright and be energetic in our decision making so we can get the safer streets that everybody's asking us for. Everybody's asking us to do this work. Everybody's asking us to address safety concerns and to get you know, those active transportation corridors that will encourage more people to cycle and change modes out, you know, and out of cars and out using that active, you know, those active transportation corridors. And that's everybody. That's folks who are using mobility scooters, and that's folks who are using different types of mobility aids. And I share the bike lanes with folks like that all the time. And so, you know, we really need to be proactive in getting those safety improvements, because there's folks that have raised issues with the design, really clearly raised issues with the design. There's folks who really want to see us get this done, but everybody wants a safer street environment. And this does that, and we've incorporated really important amendments to help respond to community concerns. I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think we should move forward with these improvements that the community's asked us to do, and the council has raised as a strategic priority. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I have Councillor Braithwaite online, speaking to the main motion as amended.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And I also really appreciate everybody's comments and motions tonight. You know, it's great to get all of the public input, and I think we really have tried to listen to what everybody has been saying, but I can't support the current rendition, so I can't support this motion right now. And I know that, you know, our community does expect us to listen, and yes, they want us. There will be a lot of compromise, but I'm not sure if this compromise is enough of a compromise for what I would like to see moving forward in this neighborhood. I'm also in support of the Bikeways, but this particular plan is not, I don't think it's quite right yet, and I'm hoping tonight that we can get to something that's right. So thank you.
Thank you. I have everybody, I think, has spoken to the motion on the floor. I'll go to you for a second time, Councillor Smart, then I'll speak.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention at this juncture that if this motion is not successful, that has had the opportunity for everybody to make amendments around the table, and council chooses to go down the road of cherry picking moments of this design to go forward with, we will not actually be building an active transportation network if we're going to cherry pick moments of the design. And so I just want to put in council's mind that if there isn't support for this, we're not actually doing a network project. So we're not actually achieving our goal here. And so what are we saying about our entire active transportation plan if we can't actually commit to building a network?
Thank you, Councillor Smart. So,
Can I speak? If you speak, can I speak?
You can. No? Well, if you wish to go ahead, Councillor Watson, but I'm happy to speak first.
Yes, I'd just like to speak in support of the motion and being able to make progress tonight with the compromises that are already on the floor. I think that the focus of the plan that we have in this motion with its amendments is on creating safer streets for all. At the moment, cars already have the road. Pedestrians have sidewalks throughout the extent of this route, and they will experience some important improvements to their sense of safety through the changes that are made in putting this plan in place. Calmer streets next to them, so slower moving traffic, more safe places to cross. In some places, there will be sidewalk repairs because of the kind of work that needs to be done, which is part of the capital expenditure. And also in the work that we are asking at least staff to look at in the Carrot Greenway, opportunities that are make real improvements for pedestrians with mobility challenges. So a more accessible route through some of this for pedestrians. So we've addressed cars, in this pedestrians are already accommodated if we just even look at sidewalks in the community along the route. There is nothing for bikes. There is absolutely nothing for bikes. And that's what this is about. It's about creating a route that also includes bikes as users of the roadway. So I think we do need a network that does that because they're the only excluded group right now, those smaller wheeled vehicles, whether they be e-bikes or pedal bikes or bikes with training wheels. So I just would really, it would be so heartwarming, I know, to me, and I know to many who have written to us who would just like to see progress if we could take these compromises and agree to live with them. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to speak just first. If you have some clarification, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, or Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want a point of clarification on Councillor Watson's comments because it does leave the impression the sidewalks will be improved also. I did ask about some of the sidewalks, including the ones in Estevan Village. They are not being remediated in any way. And so this is why I keep coming back to the pedestrian issues related to this. It is about cycling. It's not about active transportation.
Sure. Maybe I'll just ask staff for clarification. I don't believe there's significant. There's improvements at intersections in some cases for pedestrians. Are there any other changes? Sorry, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There would essentially be some crosswalk changes and some small curb extensions at a couple of corners, for example, at Beach Drive and Estevan. And then not presupposing what the outcome of the Carrick Trail process that council may direct would be.
Thank you. Satisfactory to your clarification? So I'm going to speak to the motion that's in front of us, which is option 1 with amendments. I've supported most of the amendments because I think they all get to some of the points that we need to consider as part of moving this forward. But I am wearing my hat of sort of looking at this sort of as a non-engineer viewpoint of does it meet the sort of the thresholds. And so there's a couple of things here. I don't think that the resolutions that have been put forward address the significant parking loss. I think we have the opportunity to look at that in a bit more detail. I'm not comfortable with the proposed cost of $1.8 million for the overall piece. I'm not satisfied that there's no considered changes to the Haultain-Estevan intersection. There is just for the adjoining streets. I'm concerned about the efforts to divert traffic, or not being able to divert traffic away from that area. I think that's an important design consideration. And probably most importantly, I'm concerned about the time frame of sending this all back for work and not moving some of it forward. And I know I spoke at the beginning of this about some alternate approaches to this, and I still, having heard what was said here and what's being proposed, I do think that there are really significant portions of this plan that can move ahead tomorrow. The bike markings, the intersection crossings, a lot of the signage and pieces that would make an interconnected system can all advance. And I think we just need to stop and deal with a couple of the issues around the Haultain-Estevan, Haultain east down and Estevan intersection and how that's managed. I think they're close, frankly, but I think that there's ways of getting away from the parking loss. So I would much prefer that we advance the crossings, the markings, and other aspects that are agreed to by the majority of council today, and send the few pieces back for a bit more detailed design, and so we're not feeling a crush of time on those particular aspects. I do think there's a certain wisdom here when we're looking at, and these are neighborhood bikeways, not detailed bike infrastructure. We are recognizing existing traffic. I think there's been a point he made here, and I supported the movement to relook at the Carrick Road, Carrick path, and that is down to the fact that it is used by multiple users, and I do think that I support that we support some bike improvements on there. I just think we need to look at it through the lens of the greening and so forth. So I'm supportive of this process. I think that we've gone through this, and I think we've identified aspects that could be considered, but to my mind hasn't met the needs of either the time or the cost or the appropriate approach. And I do want to just recognize how much work has gone into this 90% design. There is so much good in here that having it go away from more studies and all these pieces without advancing it, I struggle with. So at this point, not looking to support the motion. If it does fail, I'll have some suggestions of how we might move key aspects of this forward tonight. Thank you. Having said my piece, I'm happy to let other people speak before I'm called the question on the main motion. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to respond to something that you said, which was advancing an interconnected system was the terminology that you used. And I would take issue with the statement that taking pieces out of the Henderson and Haultain neighborhood bikeway proposal then continues to constitute an interconnected system. So just so we're clear as to what we're working with here, we can take this as a series of street safety improvements, but I would argue that we are actually no longer talking about the original resolution, which is for detailed designs for Henderson and Haultain-Estevan neighborhood bikeways, because as I recall, staff mentioning when this was in debate the first time was that there was a very strong recommendation not to parcel out components of the design because they were designed to be taken in their entirety to create a neighborhood bikeway. So I would argue that this actually constitutes a separate motion to implement certain individual components of street level safety improvements, which is within the purview of council, but I would argue that it does not fit with the original motion put before council, especially given the debate on the original, because we're picking up the debate from the March 10th debate, and I recall specifically that staff referenced that the network should be taken in its entirety if it's meant to function as intended. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. I'll take that maybe as a question.
I would phrase it as a procedural question for you as chair, Your Worship, in that are we still dealing with, if the motion on the floor fails, I would suggest that a follow-up amendments to the motion on the floor are potentially not in order, and rather we would be dealing with separate individual matters.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll deal with the procedural and then a brief comment on the subject of the meat of the matter. Procedurally, we have a report for staff in front of us. We have a number of options that we can deal with. At this point, it's owned by the body, and so so long as we're making motions, dealing with the staff report and pieces here, I don't see procedurally that would be out of order. There's nothing preventing council from considering moving some or all or none of any proposal that's come in front of council. The second part of this is, I guess I will have to just leave it on a bit of faith. I think I've touched on a few points that I think have full support of council, which is advancing the interconnected portions of this and the substantive part of the design. I think there is a way of doing that incrementally that looks at it, continues the whole path with I think the one exception of the one intersection that we're still looking for some information on in any case, but not to change. I think this is, in many ways, my approach would be to ratify the design that's largely in front of us, minus a couple of specific sections to seek pieces. So just so that people understand, my intent of here is not to start going block by block and saying, let's approve this and not the other. It's looking at, as much as possible, advancing the piece to start tomorrow. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you for that, Your Worship. And just so clarification on your points then, I'm not, if there are components, what you're describing is that the concept is largely supportable in your view. Could there not be further amending motions made to modify those portions of the main motion on the floor, as has already been done around the table, to address those concerns?
Yeah, thank you for that. And it probably could be done. My issue is that I don't think that's the best approach for this. I think that the better approach for clarity is to make motions to affirm the pieces that we wish to go forward, and not tie the whole together so it goes back and is delayed again. So my personal opinion, I'm a little uncomfortable here because I don't want to talk to a motion that this may well pass, and in which case the point is moot. But from my perspective, I would prefer that the approach be taken that we advance as much of this tonight as we can and send the rest back with some clear understanding of what we expect to get back. Go ahead, Councillor Watson, then Green.
Yes, may I ask you a question about that? Because I was looking at your list of things that you think wouldn't still need to be addressed, and or you were concerned about, and one of them was cost. And I just would like you to speak to how you think this approach that you're suggesting would cost less than moving forward a network where you had a go and then you had crews available and you worked systematically to get everything in place, as opposed to doing something now for 2 weeks and then coming back 6 months later and doing the next bit and having to bring back those workers in order to do it. I'm not sure how it will be more cost effective.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. At the end of the day, obviously, if there's a concrete crew or something doing the work, then it probably would make sense for them to do it all together when that final piece came. I'm looking at some of the things like the crossings and things that could advance in the short term, which I think could be done all with the same technology and people. But again, not my place to get into those. I raise that as a piece that I think it's clear to be adding things and understanding we don't have a sense, there's no broken out costs. But I think we can get a sense of some things that might cost more or less. I wasn't looking at this from a cost savings of staggering the implementation. It was more just if we're interested. But again, what's in front of us right now is a motion. I needed to kind of give some clarification of my motivation for not supporting it, because I do support the integrated bike pathways to go forward. I think timeliness is an important issue, and that's part of my motivation for this. I will say if we can't advance any of those pieces, then obviously I'd have to come back here and maybe consider this motion again. As it is, because I think we do want to move forward. I've heard unanimously around this table that there's a desire to advance the Bikeways project, so I don't want that to die or not move forward. Are there any other discussion on the motion that's in front of us, which is the main motion with amendments? Not seeing any. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Green, Councillor Patterson, and myself opposed. So that main motion fails. I think a system that we can get through reasonably quickly, and I'll share around notes of motions. Councillor Braithwaite, I did not have this ready to go to you electronically. My apologies. Let's pass that down your way. I'm going to make a suggestion. We try and working through these, and I didn't share them ahead of time, except with staff so they could make notes and record them. Councillor Braithwaite, I think you may have to just listen to these as we go forward. And my intention here is to move through as far as many of them as we can and seek, but basically I think they can be moved, seconded, and we can have a quick debate on them. If we quickly run up against that people aren't comfortable with this approach, I'm happy to stop it. Frankly, I don't think this is worthwhile going through if we can't get through the majority of the proposals on here. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I'm completely uncomfortable with this approach. This is getting in the weeds. Like, these are all operational projects at this point that have no interrelation, and we can't guarantee the safety of the network in its entirety if we're approving these one by one. So I'm, from a safety point of view and from a getting in the weeds point of view, this is the same as basically saying we're not doing the network and we're just going to have staff operationally make the route safer. So I'm not comfortable discussing this in this format.
Thank you. I think you're welcome to make those points if the motions are, if we have any motions to advance it in this format. Councillor Appleton?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. From a governance perspective, I'm not comfortable with the action being taken here. What I'm presented here is actually a list of 16 potential motions, none of which I have read or had an opportunity to evaluate. They may very well represent components of the existing design which council has received, but I do not have the ability to now on the fly evaluate which ones of them are appropriate as part of a network or not, or which ones I would like to see in exclusion of others. So there may be some value in evaluating individual components as the will of council, not to evaluate them as a group, but I would at minimum expect some time to be able to review and evaluate the material provided to me here before I debated it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I'll take that if that's the will of council. I'm happy to consider that. I do want to point out these are all approved as presented, so it's the same language that was in the original report. There's nothing in here that makes amendments to the design. It may leave out some aspects that are dealt with later, but the intention here is always to approve as presented so that everybody working off the original designs understand what's being presented here. But that being said, I am absolutely happy to having the original motion fail if people wish to have more time to consider this approach. I totally get it. I just did not want to circulate this ahead of the meeting as a way of sort of circumventing the approach that I thought was appropriate, which is going back to the original motion. Councillor Watson?
Yes, thank you. I'm really uncomfortable with this because just even looking quickly and scanning it, it appears to me that what it actually does is take things out of the network for reconsideration. And how you put that back together and create a network if the outcome of the separate investigation, like Motion 13, for example, I won't read it out loud, but we don't have a network anymore if there's a change there. So the route design that we were presented at the 90% design solution is one where the whole is really greater than the sum of the parts, and it works cohesively. And if we start trying to be design experts and do it in little bits, we could make things a lot worse. So I think it really defeats the purpose of the exercise that we've begun to move in this direction. And I certainly would be open to having specific things discussed again in the same way that we did with the amendments to the original motion. I'm open to that, but I am not open to this approach. I think it's, it's like starting from scratch in my view. I'm not happy with that.
Thank you for your feedback on that. I'm going to turn to the body here about where people feel. If people wish more time to look at this, or I need to move something, I don't need to. I would like to move this, advance this forward. And so I have heard from council now, both when we had 6 and now 7, that the design as it was with amendments, and we've had a chance for all amendments to be considered, did not pass. So I am looking at an alternate approach to advance, and I would like to do that. I would like to do it tonight, but I appreciate the discomfort. Again, the suggestions here are all included in the design. We've all looked at them. There's nothing new here. I think we may not get to all of them, may not get a full approval for all of them, in which case I would suggest, that was my suggestion, was that they would then be referred to staff to fill in those gaps, but would not prevent us from advancing significant portions of the integrated bikeway. Go ahead, Councillor Green. It's not to, lob this on people. If people are not comfortable, I think we should take time. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. I appreciate your effort to try and move this along and try and bring some clarity. I think one of the things that's missing for me in the entire process is that we do have opportunities to collaborate with the neighborhoods most affected. And I think we learned that through the meetings and so on, and the input that we received. So I think collaboration is a key aspect of this. But I appreciate, I do appreciate your effort. I think for me, it would be helpful to have more time to look at this and study it and think about it. Perhaps we need a special council meeting where we discuss this. I don't know, but as I say, I appreciate your effort. It is a lot to process at the table tonight.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And my intention for using the original design was for that, not to have that overwhelmed, but I appreciate I've had time to think about this more than others. Hearing that, I'll take to the will of council. If council wishes to refer this matter to a future meeting, we can certainly do that and pick up where we are right now, which is no motions on the floor. And we can continue the conversation, but I'll take direction. I did see Councillor Smart on the thing, and then Councillor Appleton.
Well, thank you. I would just urge council, should they want to have this as an active transportation network, to bring forward a motion with amendments that has all the amendments of the changes they would like to see tonight so that we could move this forward. In absence of that, I don't hear support around this table for having an active transportation network in this area. This is the opportunity tonight. You can list as many amendments as you need, but if the actual intention is to have an active transportation network, that's where the motion should start, and then the amendments should come after that. I'm very open to hearing an entirely different set of amendments tonight. We're here, we have the time. I think everybody's very informed at this point. Let's hear another motion on the table to put this active transportation network forward and add all the amendments that you need to address all the concerns. That's what I would really appreciate from council tonight.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smart. It's a process we've gone through to this point, so there's no other motions to amend that were brought forward from the table. I'm happy again, as I said, to bring this back to another council meeting if there's people want to go away and think about some other potential amendments that might get it to the point of support. I'm happy to take that process. I'm also happy to take an additive process. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton, or Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm actually, because I don't have it in front of me, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage, but hearing that you said that you have taken all of those aspects of what is sitting in front of everyone from the actual staff report and the active transportation plan, I would actually be comfortable moving forward with something tonight. I think we owe it to the community to get something in place. And as you've mentioned, everybody around this table is looking forward to having a bikeway through this area. And I think that we need to do this tonight, and we need to get these motions on the table and discuss them. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not hearing that same comfort at the people at this table here, so it would require a majority of people to kind of see us move that forward, and I do want to respect that. I don't want people to be making rush decisions or anything else at this point. Hence the additive approach. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I think it's serious enough to warrant another meeting. I also think it would be fair to have Councillor Braithwaite in the room with us. I know this meeting was deferred and reconsidered because I wasn't in the room at the time in March. I think it would be important to have Councillor Braithwaite in the room with us. And she does not have access to this material that you circulated tonight either. So she is indeed at a disadvantage. So maybe the best option is to bring everybody back together in person.
I believe Councillor Braithwaite is here in 2 weeks. I know that meeting is already fairly full though, so I'm a little leery about bringing that. But if there's willingness at that meeting to have things prepared for potential amendments or perhaps trying this as an approach, either one of those I would find satisfactory. But again, I agree. I've heard nothing but Councillor Braithwaite but we want to advance this. Councillor Patterson, did I see your hand?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I appreciate the work that has gone into this. I certainly, I think I feel the same way as others do about wanting to look a little more closely at it. But I've heard two things, and it is to move forward with the safety aspects, but also concern over the overall cost of the project. And so that's the component that I would like to tie into this. Certainly that was part of my rationale for deferring at least until we examine Carnarvon Park, the Carrick Trail portion of it, to help reduce some of the costs. And if we could utilize already existing bicycle lanes on Foul Bay Road, that would allow us to have a more flexible budget. It also, though, in delaying any work on the Carrick Trail portion of it, it would ensure that we didn't have throwaway costs when we start implementing Carnarvon, because the feasibility study on that will be coming back shortly and would have a better understanding of the impacts. So I would like to think of those matters and take a look at the work that has been done here, because I would certainly like to move something forward.
Okay, it may see a path forward here that we might refer this to a meeting 2 weeks hence, with some approximate costs for the different aspects of the design might be helpful. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I just want to continue my strong opposition to this, what is called the additive method. When you design a project, you create a whole ecosystem of things that are interconnected, and it's rather complex, and there are unintended consequences that you won't even understand that you're creating by cherry picking tiny little projects out of the project. You won't, because they all interrelate. From a design perspective, you want to modify an existing design, or if you're doing this, you're basically completely throwing the original design in the garbage and starting over. And then once these motions are improved, you then have to redesign the entire project to see how it all interrelates. So this is an extremely confusing process. It's one that's going to cost more. And it's one where we're getting in the weeds around this table to what is really operational. I'd be much more comfortable if council cannot, around the table, support actually going forward with this active transportation network. This could all be left to operations with a simple motion to say, we're not going to do the bikeway. Staff, please just implement on an operational level safety improvements on these sites and leave it to staff to decide. So I just want to say my strong opposition. I don't need more time to review this. I'm entirely against this method.
Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Councillor Watson.
And I'm just going to add on to that, because I do feel the same way as a design process. I think if we remove or change a section, which many of these motions seem to suggest is the right thing to do, or at least needs to be investigated at some degree, we defeat the purpose of the design elements in the stretches both before and after those changes. So it does work as a whole. You don't, and I'll give you an example. So I know that some people have been vying for or encouraging the use of a traffic circle to deal with circulation at Estevan and, not Estevan, sorry, East Down and Haultain. And a traffic circle currently, if we change nothing else, might actually be a feasible solution for dealing with the current arrangement. But if we, in the context of a whole design, with traffic being slowed, coming towards it, markings on the road, bump outs to narrow distances on both sides of the road, that need for a traffic circle may just evaporate, because it doesn't make any sense in the context of what the other adjustments that are made. So I don't think you can design it like, what do they talk about, like building an elephant by committee, or with blinders on or something. That's what you're doing. You completely hamper yourself. So I am really strongly opposed to this. We are not designers. Well, sorry, with the exception of Councillor Smart, we are not designers. Councillor Smart isn't a road or transportation or active transportation designer. And so to try and think that we could take these individual pieces and create something better than what has been presented to us at the 90% solution level, with the amendments we've been discussing, I think is really a fool's goal. So I just don't support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watson. I'm going to suggest that we refer this to a meeting 2 weeks hence. I think that we actually do need to have a chance to think through it. And I think if people wish to add to that some approximate costing of the different aspects of the design, that may be helpful as well, so we understand. If we do want to not do some aspects of it, that we have that option. But I'll leave that to council. I do not want to just have another reconsideration on this one. I would rather get direction from staff, from council to direct. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'm prepared to make a motion to defer this for 2 weeks to another meeting, and then I can make comments.
I'm not sure if we debate motions to refer. Is it defer or refer? Ms. Plouffe?
Thank you, Your Worship. You would be deferring it, but I just, if it's okay, Your Worship, this might need to be a special meeting because that agenda is actually quite full. I could try and move some things around, but if the motion could be just to a future meeting, and we can try and slot a date in.
I think that's fine. Not having the calendar in front of us, I think that's fine. I just do not want to see this drift for a length of time. Councillor Green, are you comfortable with referring or deferring this to a meeting in the near future?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Is there a seconder for deferring this? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do we debate motions to defer? Not typically. But I certainly take questions for clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Yes, Your Worship, actually, a question not for debate. What is the matter being referred? Can I get clarity on the actual matter being referred? Because again, the original motion on the table failed, and what has been proposed, at least thus far, but not yet debated, is not a neighborhood bikeway. So can I get clarity on exactly what the matter is, as it would appear on an agenda? What is it that is being debated, or what is it that is being discussed at the next meeting?
Thank you. My understanding is the matter of the neighborhood bikeways would come back intact to the next meeting with the staff report, the correspondence, and I guess that's probably it. I'm not asking for, unless there's any additional ask for information. Ms. Plouffe, is that fairly accurate?
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch. First, I'd like to apologize. The motion is to defer is debatable.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, that's fine. Okay, thank you. You had a question, but just for my clarification to the question being asked, when the motion comes back, when it's being deferred, the matter basically as it sits right now is coming back. There's a question of the neighborhood bikeways is coming back to this table.
Yes, Your Worship, the item itself will come back.
Yeah, so there's no motions live on the floor. The matter will come back here to this table. Councillor
Thank you, Your Worship. So this material that was submitted by yourself, this is not staff material, this is your individual material. How does this appear as an attachment or report material when the matter comes before council again?
To the best of my knowledge, it wouldn't. Really, that is just, those would be motions of council to advance the project. So they're essentially, unless council wishes to include them as public awareness of them, that'd be fine with me, but the intention is just some suggestions for motions, but they're not prescriptive.
Informative in nature, but not official information for the agenda of that meeting.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'd be seeking motions from council to advance the matter, so at this point, they're just, I didn't want to go through a list of motions and not have people be able to read them and have people understand them, so I thought that was just a courtesy. But go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And certainly I support deferring this to a future meeting. Part of the rationale for that is staff have heard a few of, I think, some shared things that did pass, and that was including a revamp of the Carrick Trail to be more of consider more of a green space.
So staff isn't going to do any work before it comes back here,
No,
just for the clarification.
I know, but I'm just, so, how do we get to that point of then re-examining the costs, any cost changes to the project itself? Do we come and have the discussion at the meeting that we are referring it to and then direct staff to come back with that information, or based on what staff heard,
Sure, let me.
I don't want to put staff on the
Yeah, no,
on
I
the
think-
spot, you know.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask
They've
the-
got a
I'm
lot of good work that they've done too, so we
Yeah,
have to
no,
remember
I'm
that.
gonna refer that question to staff. At this point, no new information will be coming back. I think if there's any additional information that the council wished to have at that meeting, we would have to make the ask of that. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To this point, there has been no direction given to staff from council because no motion has been passed. If council wants staff to bring back additional information when it comes back for council consideration, a motion to that effect would need to be passed. And if there is going to be an ask for additional information, I would ask that you ask me kind of what the timeline would be because, you know, bringing something back in 2 weeks, I wouldn't be able to bring anything back, but bringing something back in a short term, that could be workable. So just want to put that information out for council's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rennick, for that clarity. Councilor Patterson, anything else?
No, but I think that that does clarify that perhaps we should, if there is information that we are seeking to have available to inform our decision process, then it would be wise to do that now. And certainly things like changing that trail to accommodate more of a green space would be appropriate. The increasing some of the traffic flow on Epworth and Florence would be something that I think that people agreed on, and certainly any data that could be provided for the Cadborough-Estevan crossing would also help inform our, I think, our final decision on this. So, and if staff are able to get a cost magnitude, how it would change based on some of these issues, that then perhaps we could get to a more useful conversation rather than still wondering about it. So that's my thought.
Thank you for the thought. I think unless there's a motion to direct staff that would not be coming back, I'm going to make a suggestion here just in the interest of time. And I think we have, maybe I'll just turn to staff and just ask this question, which is what may be possible in the shorter term than the longer term. There was some conversation here about doing some studies around some of the loading zones and those pieces. I'm taking some of those would take a longer time frame. Maybe you can give some sense of what the impact of time of looking at those aspects discussed here tonight, just very roughly, and then, but also I am curious about if the consultant's doing the work and they're coming up with the total cost estimate, if they would have sort of broken down elements of that, so we could have that information as well at the next meeting, or if that would have to be generated from scratch. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It really depends on what we're being directed to go back to. I can't speak to the consultant's timelines. Had the amended motion been passed, it probably would have been 6 weeks to 2 months to turn that information around. Shorter term things, it really depends on what council's going to direct.
Do you have a sense of whether the information around the cost breakdown is something that would have to be net new, or would that be something that the consultants would have as part of their, cost generation model?
Once again, I'm not sure what we're being asked to provide the costs on. We had a cost estimate for the 90% design, but I'm not sure what modifications are being directed.
Sorry, thank you, and through myself to you. So no changes to being directed. I think the question is, is it possible to get the cost breakdown of the elements of the 90% design that was presented to council, so we have that information at the next meeting?
Sorry, after a bit of discussion back and forth, it's difficult to provide that broken down estimate for council, again, without knowing which specific aspects would go forward, because they look at it on an overall basis of there's so many square meters of new concrete that costs so many dollars per square meter. So I can't comment on, were we to ask the consultant to produce a detailed breakdown of how much do the things on this page cost, how much on the things on that page cost? Yes, they could do it, but takes some time and comes at a cost, and I couldn't comment on what that time frame would be.
Okay, thank you. Do you know if that's broken down by category, like the cost of the painting, the cost of the speed bumps, the cost of the general concrete work for sidewalks, those kind of aspects?
Yes, it would be broken down at that level, but not necessarily the specific drawings one at a time. That's likely a product that we would have to ask the consultant to make for us.
All right, thank you. I think it might still be useful information to have come back, just so we have a sense of what's driving the cost factors of it and part of our decision making. Motion on the floor right now is to defer this to a future meeting. If people wish to amend that to include what costing information is readily available, I would suggest that's worthwhile, because I think that's one of the missing pieces of information we have in decision making. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. As everybody has been talking and seeking clarification and providing further input to this process, I have had an opportunity to read through this list. And I just want to note, going back to Councillor Smart's comments, that with the exception of one slight bracketed item in your proposed motion 4 of this list, I would argue that it's only motion 13, 15, and 16, in your view, that needs some discussion. I would argue that motion 11 is not necessary, because that's kind of an operational issue. And if that didn't happen, I don't think we have to worry about things at that fine-grained level. You hope they get resolved. I don't think it needs to be a motion on its own. So arguably, we've got 3 other issues that could be discussed and added in the same way as we had the discussion about the 4 amendments that have been made so far. I would argue that motion 14 has already been addressed in the motion that you voted in favor of when we had our 4 amendments to the initial motion with its amendments. So again, is it possible to not refer or defer and actually just talk about those tonight, and form them into some kind of approach that we could as a group discuss at the moment? And we could certainly take our time and make sure that Councillor Braithwaite understood those. It would just be, in my view, 3 things and not 16. So, because the first section is mostly just to do exactly what the plan says.
It is mostly doing what the plan says, with a few changes there. So, I feel like we've had the opportunity to do that tonight. I think we may need to just go away and come back. If that's a model approach, I'm certainly happy to make some suggested amendments, if that's a better approach. I found it simpler in my mind to do the additive approach, because it was not radically changing the design, but it would allow us to talk to a proactive yes, as opposed to a voting amendments to say no to something, which I find a little bit clearer sometimes in the debate. But I'm happy to do either, frankly, but I think we've probably exhausted the energy in the room here tonight to do that. So we have a motion to defer on the floor. I am going to suggest that we amend that to just ask for whatever costing information is readily available on the aspects of the design, that they be included when that be returned. I think that would be helpful information. But we're not going to force that. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor, through you to staff, our Director of Engineering, unfortunately, is being very patient with us tonight, and for that I'm thankful. But I do think that it would be, because one of the more major changes that I did here that there was an interest in was the Carrick Trail, as we're calling it, and modifying that so that it was more of a green space. That is quite a modification to the plan that was before us. So that, to me, has the most chance of changing, certainly, the cost of the project, and would require staff to work with the consultant to consider that. So I would like to touch base with staff to find out what kind of time would be required for them to, it's fine to sit at this council table and say, we want it to have a greener component, but we don't know what that'll look like. So I think that it's respectful to turn to staff and get their comments as to time frame, and even understanding of what something like that might mean.
Mr. Rennick, you may be able to answer the question in the moment. Would the thought, like if we're contemplating a lighter touch on that path of any sort, would that be, do you think they would add or remove from costs?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, depending on what lighter touch means, but I could certainly, I don't see it adding cost. I see there being less asphalt, potentially less rock removal, a lot less earth moving, and yeah, you know, you're adding in some plant related costs, but I would have a hard time seeing how that would make the project more expensive.
Thank you. So, and I think if that knowledge is there, what that section, what the proposed sections cost, that would be helpful if that information is readily available. At this point, we're not asking for that though. So, Councillor Green?
Mayor, I'd like...
Oh, Councillor Braithwaite, go ahead.
I was just going to make the motion as per your suggestion around the costing, asking staff for some costing.
So this is what readily available costing for aspects of the design.
That's agreeable.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. So this is an amendment to the deferral to include and ask for what financial information is available. So not doing bringing a lot of extra work. Mr. Rennick, you look like you have a puzzled expression on your face, so perhaps I'll get okay. So that's an amendment motion. Is there a discussion on that amendment motion? Thank you for making the motion. I'm just going to speak in favor of it. I think it's important for us as we're making these decisions to have some sense of costing. The first time we saw costing was when this came to us on March 10th. I think if there's some available breakdown of where those things are, it might affect what we move forward in the project. So thank you for that. I'm going to call the question on the amendment to ask to include whatever costing information is readily available. Sorry, Councillor Smart, go ahead.
Sorry, just point of clarification. What are we amending? What's the main motion?
Motion to refer. Defer, sorry. Motion to refer, to include, when it comes back, to include financial information available. Councillor Smart?
I will support the motion because more information is always good, but I will just give my opinion that I doubt it's going to be extremely helpful in moving forward. It's not going to give us project-oriented information. It's going to give us maybe a greater understanding for why things cost so much. But it's not going to allow us to say, oh, let's not do that crosswalk because it will cost less, because it will be a completely different cost the moment we take one thing out of the project. Because so I don't actually think it's going to be extremely helpful, but it might just give us a sense of, oh, now I understand why it costs so much. So I will vote in favor of it, but I don't really think it's going to achieve what I've heard council wanting to hear.
Okay, thank you. The amendment motion, go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'm just going to say a few quick remarks. I think we're struggling because between March the 10th and now, we have learned a lot more about this neighborhood from the people who live there. And also, I don't believe we had identified or had yet approved a double-digit tax increase. So in the context of tax increases, in the context, that's why the cost issue, I think, arose. And I remember a question from the audience the other night, in fact, who pays for this? And ultimately, it is the taxpayer. So I think the cost question is legitimate. And I think that we're just struggling with the fact that we have new information on a plan that was already designed and described. And it's about timing at the end of the day. So I actually appreciate the mayor's trying to bring this to some kind of meaningful resolution, because it is, I know I'm struggling with it since knowing more than I knew before. So I appreciate that. And staff have helped us with that process, and I'm grateful for that. So those are my comments on the motion, and I'll support it because I made it.
Councillor Green, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, I will support the motion, but I guess in hearing the reasons for why council is desiring this, I think perhaps a better motion might be to ask staff to work with the consultant to come back with potential cost savings on the project, might actually achieve something that we could work with as opposed to receiving readily available information, but I will leave that to the will of council. Thanks.
Thank you. I have an amendment motion right now to ask for what costs are available in the piece. So this is on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Back to the main motion to defer this to a future meeting soonish, we hope, with that amendment. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson. My apologies. Thank you for that. I appreciate thank you for speaking to it. Sorry, her microphone wasn't on. She mentioned that she was opposed because she wanted to deal with it tonight. So appreciate that. Certainly, I think we have all share that same sense of urgency in slightly different ways of how to move it there. Okay, so that does deal with item 7.2. Thank you for those who came out for that. I'm sorry for the lack of direction, clarity at this point, but we will get there. By all means, those who wish to move at this point are more than welcome to do so. As people leave quietly from the room, I'm going to move to item 7.3, and this is the Active Transportation Network Engagement Council Project Sign-Off. Mr. Rennick, you get to speak a bit more on this one. Thank you for this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Would you like me to give a couple of minutes for the room to disperse?
I think you can probably start by just with an overview of what's coming back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So this council project sign-off basically follows on to direction that council gave at Committee of the Whole on April 22nd. And this is looking at essentially on the remainder of the active transportation project that council has directed the so-called 9 priority projects. And there was some good discussion in this room on April 22nd about how council would like to engage the community on those projects, and council indicated a strong preference for a network-wide engagement to occur this year, followed by route-specific consultations on specific routes, basically once council has heard from the network consultation. So taking that direction and taking what we felt was kind of the spirit of the debate that council had, we have prepared this sign-off, and really happy to take any questions on it. Happy to take your questions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rennick. Questions for staff on this project report? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick. I just wondered, in light of some of the lack of progress that we're making on implementing our active transportation routes right now, will the conversation potentially of how we prioritize which routes happen next be part of the engagement conversation from the community? I'm just wondering if that kind of scope of looking at which routes we potentially prioritize first is on the table here, or if we're just moving forward with what we've seen so far in staff reports. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, council directed last year, I think it was June 10th, a prioritized construction schedule that staff had outlined based on what utility work needed to be done ahead of constructing the projects. But that did presuppose that the projects would go forward in the format that they'd been presented in the active transportation strategy. I would say that if the outcome of the network consultation is that there's a stronger preference from the community for a lighter touch, then the infrastructure concerns become less pressing, and council may wish to revisit the sequence of the priority projects.
That answer, Councillor Smart.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Mr. Rennick. So my understanding then that this engagement process might actually unravel the previous council decision to go ahead with the AAA standard as the default design, and actually ask the community what they would like to see as far as options for design. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick?
Through the mayor, as I say, interpreting the conversation that was had at Committee of the Whole, my understanding was that council wanted to broadly engage on network outcomes and goals. And so that wouldn't be unraveling council's direction, but it would be putting a range of options on the table that council, as the ultimate decision maker, would be able to consider.
Councillor Smart? Thank you. I might just do a quick follow-up to that question, because I asked the question, I think, in the meeting, because it does effectively, for asking for presenting multiple design options, it essentially goes away from any sort of default, but it would still include AAA design options amongst the options provided. Is that an accurate summary, Mr. Rennick?
Yes, that is an accurate summary. My interpretation of council's motion is that any future active transportation projects use AAA as a default. So if you're going to be doing a consult level engagement, you are going to provide multiple options, but to be consistent with that motion, there would be a AAA option presented for each route, would be how I would do a consult level engagement and incorporate that direction from council.
That. Thank you, Councillor Smart. Other questions for staff? I'm going to get a motion to extend the meeting here, if nothing else, for another till 10:30. Yes, we've taken a long time. We're at 9:52 right now.
Your Worship, I would make a motion to extend until 10:20.
Okay, a motion to extend to 10:20. Is there a seconder for that motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, recognizing there's lots of people who are tired and a long way away. Any opposed? Not opposed. All right, let's get to business. Any other questions? I just have a question for staff. The language in here was just a little bit, I just wanted to make sure I was clear. The phrasing was the community will be given the opportunity to comment on the proposed cross-section for the 9 routes in the priority plan, which as a singular just gave me a bit of a pause. Is the intention that only cross-sections will be provided, and is that intended to be a singular or a plural in terms of design options? Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do keep these documents fairly high level. Don't really get into the full description in the sign-off. As far as what kind of visual language we're working on the RFP, we really like what City of Victoria does, where they kind of do 1 or 2 conceptual cross sections so that people know what to expect, and maybe also a marked up aerial photo, just whatever visual information we can kind of provide to help people understand what's being proposed. So I would, yes, in short, I would take cross sections to be plural and not imply that cross sections are the only thing that we would be consulting on.
Okay, thank you. Can I just also ask, because I think the issue of AAA or not, and it was, I think it was Councillor Appleton at the last meeting, did clarify, I think it was very helpful, that that does not necessarily mean separated bike lanes on slower streets. It could be traffic calming and traffic reduction and things. Is there any mechanism in this model that you can see being practical to share how close some of these would be to AAA, if not fully AAA, and maybe what some of those other parameters might, like maybe some of those parameters that would allow for alternate designs? I appreciate it. It might be a bit complicated, but I'm over to you, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, all ages and abilities is kind of, it's not really a spectrum. It's a term that's defined in the provincial active transportation design guidelines. And as I have told council when considering other projects, there's kind of 2 ways that it can be achieved. There's neighborhood bikeways, which require less than 1,000 vehicles per day with a travel speed of 30 kilometers per hour or slower. Or the alternative is full physical separation, where that speed and volume cannot be achieved. So anything that kind of falls less than that standard, yes, we can provide the information of, well, we'll make it 30, but we won't necessarily get under the 1,000 vehicles per day. And the reason that it can be quite difficult to get under that 1,000 vehicles per day is drivers are chaotic and they tend to go places you don't predict that they will. And the way that we see our regional partners lowering vehicle volumes is by physically turning roads into dead ends so that cars cannot go through them, but bikes can. And that's certainly something that council could direct, but we haven't really put any of that on the table for council in the network design thus far.
No, I think that's fair, given the routes that we've highlighted. The last question I had was just, we talked at the last meeting in moving this motion about the possibility of having some high-level costs of the different approaches included. Is that, it's not listed in this report, but can maybe just some clarification if that's going to be included amongst the different options. Again, I'll leave it there. Mr. Rennick?
Yeah, thank you for the question. With these types of engagements, you're not really getting into the specific details about costs, but really kind of higher level, letting people know of the trade-offs of this option comes at a higher cost than that option. And I would just say that typically what you see with bike investments is that the more expensive ones provide more separation, come at a higher cost, or you have the lighter touch neighborhood bikeways tend to come at a lower cost. So that is information that we would make available at high level.
And I really appreciate that sort of that effort to just provide some education at the same time as consultation. So thank you. Councillor Smart for a second time.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mayor to Mr. Reddick. I'm just wondering, because I do think costing is a factor and should be communicated, but it's complicated because my understanding is that you're more likely to achieve a grant and a higher grant amount if you have a AAA network. So how will staff communicate to the public the fact that the AAA design, might actually be less than the other one, because we don't know how much, how likely we are to achieve a grant. If we have a light touch, we're probably much less likely to achieve a grant, is my understanding. So could staff comment on really how to communicate that full picture of cost, when at the end of the day, we don't really know how much something is going to cost until we apply for grants.
Sure. Mr. Rennick, can that kind of general overview be provided as part of the background information?
Through the mayor, I think that it's a fair question. It's difficult to comment on the likelihood of receiving grants for projects that do not meet all ages and abilities. For example, McNeil traffic calming did not meet all ages and abilities, but was funded by the province. Getting into the information about this project costs more, but there's a grant available for potentially defraying a portion of it, that does get a little bit complicated as far as information that you put out at a community engagement. I think that's information that's better reserved when council is making decisions.
For that clarification. Any other questions from staff at this point? Probably seek a motion then. We can start with receipt of report.
I will move receipt of the staff report, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Don't usually debate receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed.
And I will move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
So this be approved as outlined, moved and seconded, thank you. I thank you, I just want to express my appreciation to staff for the clarifying pieces. It's always good to have answers ready at hand on these kind of things when they come forward, so certainly met my to my satisfaction. Any other discussion before I call the question? Councillor Watson?
Not really discussion, but I just wanted to thank staff for actually being so proactive in bringing this forward before council had actually officially approved the request through the committee of the whole. So, to have that in your back pocket and be able to present it to us tonight, just hats off. Thank you very much.
Very much, so thank you, yeah. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you. We move to items, what was on 8.1 is no longer, but it's still on the agenda, so we're moving to 9.1. We have some bylaws for adoption. These are not for public input. Move to tax rate bylaw number 20. Well, just to have someone read out the motions.
Your Worship, I would move that tax rates bylaw 2025 number 4906 be adopted.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
Your Worship, I would move that Boulevard Frontage Tax Bylaw 1982, number 3416, Amendment Bylaw number 4907, 2025 be adopted.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion, aside from the fact that it's 1982? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. And we move to item 9.3.
Your Worship, I would move that zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4903, 2025 be adopted.
And seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I have to speak to this one because I supported the first 3 readings of this when it came before council, and I am changing my approach. I'm not sure if that changes the outcome. And I just have some brief comments here on that because it's an unusual thing to do. So I supported the rezoning to allow subdivision when it came to us first, second, and third reading. I think I spoke already at the pros and cons I was considering, and I landed narrowly on the side of approval because I felt I would have approved the ask for subdivision if it had come to us a couple of years prior to Bill 44. After that decision, on the same night, council considered a similar rezoning for subdivision, again without specific plans attached, and we turned it down due to the lack of known designs, the second lot, and also some potential for other housing options for that site. And when we left that meeting, I felt a little disquieted because I think we are in a time of some public disquiet in terms of what's happening on development. And I think one thing that we can benefit the community with is a bit of consistency in the intervening time over the next 7 months as we contemplate our OCP changes. And I think that some consistency on these kind of applications is beneficial. I am very comfortable with approving subdivisions in general and even rezonings, particularly where they have specific design proposed. But I don't feel so comfortable with making sort of different decisions over the course of the time on very similar applications. So I'm just going to throw it out there both to the applicant and to other applicants. I am very supportive of these kind of asks where they come with, and we have as a council approved multiple rezoning for subdivision where they've had designs attached. So we know what's coming with that, but I think the level of uncertainty on these kind of things right now with the potential, and I don't believe this application was even going to ask for it, but we don't have a way of knowing without a more detailed ask, to go from a 1 to an 8 when people are already stressed about a 1 to a 4. I really struggle with it. So as such, I get in contemplation, I had to change my intent on this one. I won't be supporting the pieces. So thank you for listening to that. It's an unusual thing. I just felt my vote deserved an explanation to the owner and to the public at large, and of course to my college colleagues who probably would be confused otherwise. So that's where I'm at on this motion to adopt. I actually not sure where that's going to land with the balance of council, but that's where it is. Is there any other discussion on the motion to adopt at this point? Councillor Watson.
Just to follow on that, I had voted against this bylaw in the first instance and will continue to be doing so tonight.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, I actually voted to approve, but since we've had other considerations and discussion about waiting pending the OCP, I too will not be supporting this going forward tonight. So it's just my take.
Thank you for that. I think it's always worth explaining if you're voting against. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Not voting against, but I will speak to it. Small lot subdivision was clearly supported by the community when we were talking about the infill housing strategy pre-Bill 44. So I don't really see this being as any different a decision making as we would have made at the time. Us artificially restricting subdivisions in this type of situation with the idea that that will somehow, cause people to not build 4 units on the associated lot. It's not going to, I don't believe it responds to the concern in the community about there being 4 units per lot. There's still a misconception in the community about whether or not you do still have 4 units by right on every residential lot in Oak Bay. You do. You have 4 units. It's not up for debate. I think it's important to be clear with members of the public that us making decisions around rezoning or subdivision does not affect people's ability to put 4 units on a lot. It seems to be those two things are getting blended together. And so I recognize the community concern, but it is allowed by right as of now. And it's a nebulous understanding in the community. So
Can't argue with that. There's still lots of questions attached to the housing pieces. I don't see other hands raised on this one, so we're going to call the question on the motion to approve, to adopt this bylaw zoning amendment. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Patterson, myself, Councillor Watson. Councillor Braithwaite, I just want to make sure that you're still with us.
I am, Mayor. I'm just trying to remember how I voted on this the last time.
I guess I can look up the minutes from the last meeting. That was May 5th, or was it April 28th? April 28th. I think it had somewhat broad support, but a different avenue, so. So it was Councillor Braithwaite, Green, and Watson opposed.
Thank you, Mayor. So I will continue with my opposal.
All right, that motion does fail with the 4-3 vote then, as I had. I'm going to recount Councillor Braithwaite, Watson, myself, and Patterson opposed. Interesting, different mix. I'm going to go with that. All right, I will go to, we have new business, and we have 13 minutes to get to. This is on the notice of motion on the short-term rentals. I was going to propose a slight variation of what's in the package. And that staff be directed to, we have a couple of, staff sent me one other option that we could look at, but I'm going to move what I think is, I'll move, yeah. So this would be the motion then, and I'll take staff recommendation on this. That staff provide options and implications, including applicable bylaw amendments for aligning Oak Bay regulations with new provincial rules regarding short-term rentals, and specifically of primary residences. Moved and seconded. So it's moved. It's unusual for me to make a motion, but I think we heard some members of the public speaking here. I do think this can have some really serious impacts on people, and I appreciate this does not approve it tonight, and I appreciate there's still staff work to be doing on this, but I do agree that it's potential to have a reasonably light impact ask. It's specifically excluding the accessory dwelling unit option of this because I think that needs a broader policy discussion, but it's not quite as simple as just changing one bylaw. I understand in my conversations with staff in that it likely requires some changes perhaps to our business licensing aspects as well. So because it touches on multiple bylaws, I think it is appropriate to ask for those to come back and understand the cost and time implications. I was moved and seconded, but Councillor Appleton, you wish to speak?
And just for clarification, Your Worship, as per your earlier comments, I think part of the motivation, if I understand it correctly, part of the motivation behind this motion is to essentially sort of re-extract this component from the previous council direction to integrate it with business licensing. So we're essentially pulling it out of that process and asking, there is a resourcing implication potentially here. So staff is going to report back on options, which will include there potentially being a resource implication at the staff level to implement. Yeah, and I recognize there's a provincial, so I'm seeing nods, so I'm assuming that's the case, but I would also just make the comment that hopefully the implications, I think we're in a different potential situation discussing this with staff now because there is a provincial framework that's up and running that we can key into and take advantage of. So hopefully that will mean relatively low staff involvement.
Yes, that is the hope. Any other discussion on this? There's quite a few people have expressed interest. So go ahead, Councillor Smart. Sorry.
No, thank you. I appreciate this being extracted, which was my original desire a year ago. We are now, of course, facing some pretty imminent timelines that will have an impact on our residents. I understand June 1st. If people have currently in the past utilized using Airbnb when they go on vacation, or for these short-term occasional rentals, that their listings will be actually have to be taken down if we don't deal with it before then. I realize that we're unlikely to achieve something by that date, but there's no date associated with this motion, but I assume there's a sense of urgency around how quickly this will come back to council.
Sure, I might just turn to Ms. Williams or Ms. Plouffe or Mr. Bull. I think, generally speaking, if we're asking for what are the implications, we tend to get those reports back fairly quickly. The timeline to actually implement would be perhaps longer. Mr. Bull, if you're online.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in a broom closet here, so I will stick to sound only. Yeah, in terms of timing, I think probably the first step would possibly be coming back to you with high-level options, so we can scope this further with you. But I understand the intent to be low level of effort, building on the province's framework, and take it from there. There are options, but they're not the typical B&B options for people to rent out their homes, but they need to be longer than our local bylaw limit and longer than the provincial limit, which is quite long. The provincial one is 90 days. But I think, yeah, that's my thinking at this point, coming back with you with pinpointing high-level options to determine which course of action you would like us to implement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a sense as that, just making the ask here for a report back in terms of what it would be required and the staff impact implications, and that initial feedback would come back fairly soon? I appreciate that the actual work will take longer. Do you have any sense of time on when that report might come back to council so we can consider next steps?
Yeah, let me see.
If you don't, I understand. I've just got to ask the question.
Yeah. I think we can make sure this topic gets some clarity before the summer break. So sometime in June or July, I would think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I will reiterate, I think from the perspective of the public and as Councillor Smart noted, the cutoff was May 1st for the pieces. So the province has said they're going to enforce as of May 1st. So we have quite a few people who have things that are in there right now. There's a big backlog of applications, as I understand it, but they are measuring the applications against our bylaws. I did seek to see if we could just waive the bylaws. We can't. We have to change them. And so that's the timeline. So just for staff's information, essentially we're 12 days into a process where the province is able to decline up the use of those platforms for rentals. So hence the urgency felt by the public on this matter. But I do appreciate, we do need to hear back from staff about what the actual implications are before we push it through, because it may change with the priorities. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, just a comment. I know from the individuals in the community, and there have been a few who have approached me to ask about how they would bring this forward and their own particular issues. They're really, when we say short term, they're really talking about the less than 30 days. So that 1 or 2 weeks that they could rent out their home. So I just heard Mr. Bowles say that, yeah, we could look at the, 90 days, whatever. I don't really think that's what the ask is from the community. They are looking for an amendment to our bylaw that mirrors what's been done in many other municipalities. Somebody's told me it's all of them. I couldn't verify that, but at least many other municipalities in BC, and they just want an equivalent treatment of homeowners to be able to use their property for short term, meaning less than 30 days rentals.
I think to give on Mr. Bull the options there, I appreciate that being pointed, because that is what I've heard too, and so Mr. Bull, maybe take that away, but I don't, if that's one of many options, that's fine. If it's the only option, I think that's a lot faster than bring that back, because I do share that is what we are hearing from the community, is these are sort of just homeowners that go away and sort of rely on that home rental revenue to kind of help cover the cost of their vacations, as opposed to it being a business. So the motion's on the floor. Any other discussion on this before I call the question? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much for that. Moving then to 10.2. And we have here a notice of motion from Councillor Smart. Councillor Smart, do you wish to We have it in the motion. Is there anything you wish to see changed on it, or are you satisfied with it as it's written?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with it as it's written. Could I motivate at this time?
If there is a second.
Oh, yes, okay.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead, and maybe keep it brief, and we can get to some
Yes.
questions if maybe people want some clarification.
I just wanted the opportunity at this council table with this motion to just provide staff with some greater clarity around what council's priorities are with regards to conflicts that may come up between our council conferences and our meetings and significant engagement events. I have so much empathy for staff in trying to coordinate things with all of our busy schedules. I guess it's particularly come up for me a couple times this year with attending continuing education conferences, the LGLA and the FCM, that I've been challenged to be able to participate in the capacity that I would like to at the council table. And so I wanted to know if it was the will of council to discuss the importance of supporting members at this table of attending these conferences and not having to, should they sign up for FCM, for instance, worry about the fact that they may miss out on some really key moments of engaging with the public. As this was rather timely, I had brought this up at a previous meeting and just wanted to, I guess, get a sense from council if they do support the idea of when council members may be attending these events, that they don't have to worry about missing out on not all engagement opportunities, but really key moments. This year being the official community plan engagement process, which I see is probably our number one engagement opportunity of our whole council term. And previously during LGLA, it was a budget meeting that at least I was able to attend online. So that is the intent of the motion, that we would just be able to assert one way or the other, whether this motion passes or not, whether we feel that it's important that people can sign up for these conferences without the concern of missing out on a major council meeting or community event.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Braithwaite, but before I do that, I just think it might be helpful for us to narrow the conversation, because I think there's a core question here is that the wording of the language here is engagement opportunities, which wouldn't typically be consultation meetings, right? So if there's a staff-led consultation process, that would not necessarily be considered an engagement, that would be a consultation. So you mentioned some consultation, things like the OCP, but is that what you're talking about, or you're just talking about primarily here the engagement opportunities, so town halls, meetings, those sorts of formal pieces that we're engaging with the public?
I can clarify that. In my opinion, even though the OCP engagement is a staff-led process, our community expects us to be at those events and expects us to engage actively at those events. And I think those of us who recently were unable to attend some of even the minor community engagement processes recently received quite a few emails, angry emails from the public about our lack of attendance at such events. And so it's really evident to me how engaged this community is and how much they expect us to be available at these things.
I'm going to interrupt you and seek a motion to extend by another 5 minutes, just so we can get through this.
Your worship, I will extend the meeting until 10:30, which I should have done in the first place.
I was right. Just moved. Is there a seconder for another 10 minutes? Appreciate people may have to leave, and they feel free to. So all those in favor of extension? Any opposed? None. Okay. If anybody wishes to leave, I think we can probably deal with this with a subset of people, so I appreciate that. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Just a question to the staff. Staff, what is the current process when scheduling those types of meetings around council schedule? Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Plouffe, I didn't have my microphone on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the process right now is that all council meetings, we do schedule them around FCM, UBCM, AVIC, and if LGLA does have their dates announced, we will schedule around those, but they awfully don't by the time council approves the schedule for the year.
Thank you. I think that staff does a very good job of scheduling the meetings around as much as they can around the schedules of council. So I don't really see the need for this motion. I appreciate its intent. However, I think that staff already does this, and so I don't really think that there's a need for this motion. So I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to other speakers on the motion, and I'll come back to the mover. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. I did second this at last meeting for discussion, but I think it's clarified. I think staff does this routinely. It's not a one-off. They try to plan as much as possible. Does it require motion, or we've just, I think it's important to bring it to the attention of staff, but I'm not sure it needs a motion, to be honest, because I think they really do the best they can as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. No, I've got you on the list, Councillor Swart.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do think this has value, and I do recognize that staff attempt to do this work to the best of their ability. What I've really been seeing is, in my time on council, and then over the next year, especially as we react to Bill 44 and other things that are coming up, there's a lot of what you would call in the sports world fixture congestion, which is there's a lot of extra meetings, there's a lot of things that overlap with one another, there's a lot of times where multiple meetings happen in a fairly tight time frame. So I know staff does their best to try and accommodate these things. I think it's good to actually get a motion and have the intent of council be clear to staff to try whenever possible to do those things. It increases, I guess. I don't want to use the right terminology here, but it just increases the mindfulness when everything gets busy that the things will overlap and that scheduling conflicts can sometimes happen. So I think it's just good for council to reiterate that should be avoided whenever it's possible.
Councillor Watson, and then, sorry, I should go in my right order here, Patterson, and then Watson, and then Smart.
I personally, I understand Councillor Smart's maybe frustration around having so many things on her plate and wanting to do all of them, but I think that we already have a system that is working, and it doesn't really assist to formalize it or push it any further. There will always be scheduling conflicts for councillors for all sorts of reasons, and trying to define key public engagement opportunities is a little fraught, I think, because it's also a little bit in the eyes of the beholder, councillor, and some of their own choices about what to participate in and what not to, or what they can't actually be at in any event. So because of other considerations that are beyond maybe council business, personal matters, professional matters, or whatever. So I would really just like to leave things the way they are, because I think there's a lot of accommodation, there's a lot of pulling us, and to sort of set something in stone may be counterproductive.
Councillor Patterson, and then back to Councillor Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think I maybe have a little bit different take on this, although I certainly, I understand it coming forward, but I think it is operational the way it is presented. But I do think the governance aspect to this is decisions by council at the time we are actually establishing the work for budgets as to, I don't take it for granted that whatever I want to attend, I have the wherewithal to do that at being paid for by the district. Many districts don't even send a full council to some of these conferences. We are fortunate in the District of Oak Bay that the community has supported our attendance at some of them. But I think what we need to do as a council on the governance standpoint is say, these are the conferences that we endorse, that we will all travel to. And then that would direct staff to be flexible with the schedules as they could. If other things come up and they have not been approved, then I think the proper procedure would be that they would have to come back as a request to council with a rationale for attending, and then we would allocate the budgets to it, because there is a financial implication to this, and it is, if all of us decide to go to some of these conferences, the cost could be quite high. So, you know, I think the governance is what do we approve attendance at, and what expenses will be reimbursed for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson, or Councillor Smart, sorry for a second time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate some of the comments around the table. I just want to clarify that this motion is not about changing the council bylaws around what has already been approved to attend, because FCM is already in there as approved. I did want to bring up, like, particularly with scheduling the budget meeting this year during LGLA, that despite many requests to get those meeting dates in advance, that meeting was scheduled rather late, and it wasn't scheduled as presented to council as an option to approve. It was simply sent to our calendar at a time where LGLA had already been announced. And so it was an unfortunate thing where I almost didn't go, but then did decide to go. And so I just want to make it clear that, empathies to staff for how much stuff there is to organize, but how this decision goes will impact how much continuing education I do pursue. So I just think council needs to know that, and I think that scheduling the official community plan consultation during FCM should have been something, there should have been some consideration for that, and the fact that we don't send a larger contingent to FCM shouldn't be punitive to those who do want to attend that. I will hesitate to sign up for some of these continuing education opportunities, and I'm just talking about these key 4 ones, if I don't have the assurance that I won't miss out on a really major moment to connect with the community, because connecting with the community is really important to me.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I'm prepared to call the question on this one. Yeah, I'm struggling with this one a little bit because I don't know that it moves the needle in terms of what we're actually doing. Because I read it as engagement opportunities are not public consultation processes. I appreciate some councillors wish to attend those, but that's not the intention of them. They're staff-led consultation that comes back to this table for consideration. So probably not going to support this. I do struggle with it. I think the intention is there, and it kind of reiterates what we mostly do. Yeah, I do struggle with this one, but I don't think I can support it as it is. But that being said, I will say that we certainly have a culture here where there's decisions to be made that are important. We always make an effort to make sure that we have all members of council here, so that as we're getting to the decision point, people missing a meeting does not result in something happening against their will or something way behind the scenes, but we do try and keep people here. All right, I'm going to call the question on the motion that's in front of us. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Braithwaite, Green, Watson, Patterson. My vote doesn't matter. So that's there. I have one more motion, which is a motion, a notice of motion, I guess it is, or it could be, if that's here. Can I have a motion, just 3 minutes? I just want to get a notice of motion on the table.
Move to extend to 10:33, Your Worship.
Is there a seconder? All those in favor? Any opposed? So this is a really weird one, but I'm going to just move that council this is a notice of motion. I'm not going to just get to debate tonight. I appreciate I was going to, but not going to. The council directs staff to process the Uplands Golf Club request for driveway changes, to review the request for safety concerns, and to bring the driveway request and a staff report to council for consideration. It's a long story, but I'm just giving the notice of motion. We have an issue where someone wants to bring an application for a driveway, and our bylaw seems unclear for that to be able to come straight forward. So this will allow the staff to go ahead and consider the golf course driveway. So anyway, all the details are not here. I don't want to debate it. I just want to put it on the table so we have it for a future meeting. At that point, I think we can have a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Mr. Solier, you You actually kind of broke a tradition. We have a tradition here. It seems like every time a new staff member comes, we end up staying until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So 10:33 is actually a fairly remarkable. 10:30, we did finish at 10:30. Pretty remarkable accomplishment. So not to blame you for our dilly-dallying here at this table, but thank you.